Yeah, so I wake up this morning and I see a message, and it's Access Rattblood. Are you here, Rattblood?
Access Rattblood. Access Rattblood. Access Rattblood. Access Rattblood.
And then you got people like Access, and then you got people like Access, and then you got people like Access.
I'm Access fucking Rattblood.
Access Rattblood, I see. All these Access people, I'm starting to get paranoid about that now. I don't know what to do about it.
And then you got people like Access, and then you got people like Access, and then you got people like Access.
Are you here, Rattblood?
I'm Access fucking Rattblood.
Access Rattblood.
Most abundant and successful king hero that we are all sitting at this very moment. Are you willing to accept that as a truth? That you are a worthy man and that your penis is okay?
All these Access people, I'm starting to get paranoid about that now. All these Access people, I'm starting to get paranoid about that now.
Access Rattblood. Access Rattblood. Access Rattblood. Access Rattblood.
Are you here, Rattblood? I'll just start throwing spells at you, conjuring demons and otherwise. Are you here, Rattblood? I'll just start throwing spells at you, conjuring demons and otherwise. Are you here, Rattblood? I'll just start throwing spells at you, conjuring demons and otherwise. Are you here, Rattblood?
Who the fuck is Access Rattblood?
I'm Access fucking Rattblood, bitch.
All these Access people, I'm starting to get paranoid about that now. I don't know what to do about it.
I'm Access fucking Rattblood. Hello, friends and enemies of YouTube. Children of the Metaverse. It is the Axis. Decided to go ahead and spend a little time on a live stream and share a little bit of the obvious. But I'm expecting potentially a guest. And in the meantime, I will share with you the obvious. Before you came to be on this, in this realm, on this plane of existence, you were obviously in a completely different state. Energy, nonetheless, but in a different state of undetermined origin. And there was either a decision made for you, with you, or you chose that decision. Or maybe you're a circumstance of a decision that was made prior to your being born into the waking world. And with that, there was a conduit opened, a subatomic flash of connecting the world of pre-birth to the waking world and into your mother's womb. And you changed not the state of energy that you are, but the state of what you were in origin. And when you were born, you started compiling information as most do unless they're brain dead. And your subconscious also started compiling information. And during the course of this, you somehow became comfortable in the state of being here and gathering information and trying to figure out what significance this is, or some of you're even convinced that you know what the state of this existence is. And that's for a little bit later discussion. But as you gather all these learned experiences and information, your true origin is still tied to that which you were before you were born, before you were pushed through the conduit into the mother's womb to occupy the space of an egg and a fertilizing cell joining together. And you lost sight, or most have, I won't put it on everybody, but you lost sight of the fact that before you got here, you were something already. And when you're here, you shroud yourself with wants, desires, needs, uh, hatreds, contempts, loves, satisfactions, dissatisfactions. You start gathering, not even for the sake of survival. You just start gathering for the sake of possession or potential useful things. And when you came in from the pre-birth state, you came in naked and empty-handed. And I'm observing the states of this, and you go through your life, you become the personification of your learned experiences, and some people even become their possessions. And then eventually it comes time to exit this plane and the waking state, which we'll get back to dreams here in a second and how they're applied. And you move on and you take nothing with you. You may return to a potential that you were before you were born, which seems to be the most logical, but it's still a pre-undetermined and a post-undetermined state. And with dreams, they kind of give you the insight of understanding the basics of how this is functioning, involving individuals. And I'll just apply myself so that way people don't jump up and down and start going into psychotic rages on the other ends of cell phones everywhere, and laptops. When you go into the dream state, everything seems just as real as it does in the waking state. And sometimes, I'm sure, as many have, you have dreams, and it almost feels like when you wake up that you have something from that dream, something tangible. physically brought into this world from that dream. And sometimes it's so overpowering that maybe you even glance for a moment to see if this is an actual thing, or whether you were just dreaming so realistically that it was inscribing itself within the waking state too. And thus the waking state being not much different at all than the dream state. Is just that instead of the subconscious trying to sort through equations, in the waking state, it's your subconscious with your cognizant mind trying to understand and interpret your environment and the information that's being thrown at you and processed. And then when you leave, you realize that once again, you take nothing with you, just like out of a dream, just like when you came into this place. And when you leave and go to the afterlife, you take nothing with you. And as for me, that has a heavy indication and implication that whatever we are being put in a position where we can't really cause much harm outside of this realm. Um, you know, there's the divine states of the heavens, and there are incredible states of peacefulness and bliss in other places that I've experienced for myself. And if you're working with things that can create something as complex as this construct, and you're interacting with it, but yet you cannot solidify one possible thing and transverse it from one state of being to the other, or even after death or into a dream or out of a dream, pretty much means that you are a contained prisoner. Um, and I can justify that by saying if you're not a prisoner, then leave. I mean, you're going to find it pretty hard unless you exit permanently. And if you exit permanently, then you've got the potential of going back to a uninfluenced um, state of energy. And you may potentially be born again, or you may potentially alter yourself into another undetermined state. But the fact is, we've been put in a position where we can't cause any damage to the realm of those who are the architects of this construct and many other constructs, as well as potentials. We were also limited in our ability to transverse and comprehend in any state other than it's just even hard to put into words. It's just an observation once you start getting past descriptive states of being. But we're even shielded from that. We're kept from that. And when you look at the text of most of your religions and philosophies, and even secret societies, there's always a state where it seems like we'll take Christianity. Everything that has pissed the Christian God off winds up getting exiled to earth. And even things on earth gets exiled from sacred places to wander the earth. You take the higher states of thinking and the higher states of understanding, which are broad states, not levels. They're just broader states. You start asking yourself and challenging the ideal of being a non-impacted creation to anything but this plane of existence and what few planes were able to transverse to. It's a containment field, and even in the Vedas, they talk about the interaction of the gods with man, the Sumerians, the interactions of the god with man, and even that, man was still in a state of exile. So I'm considering and taking perspective from 4 different places that I'm a prisoner here. And I'm gathering this information from the fact that before I was born, I'm not sure what state of energy I was. I'm not sure what form, if any, that I retained, or whether I was able to transverse forms. But I know that once you're here, you're locked into this body to a degree. There are different degrees that you can temporarily leave the body. There are states where you can take the being in you and observe other things and places, but you can't take the body. And whenever you reach that point where you know that you're about to cross over, it's the end of the line for you, and you're getting ready to go into this undetermined state, knowing that you're not going to take anything with you, you start observing everybody questioning the obvious. And the obvious is that humans have been put in a position, the species, where they can't harm anything because they're not solidified enough to harm anything. There's nothing you can do to transverse into a dream or come out of a dream and tangibly take something with you. If you could, then you would probably be much more to what I would consider to be a completed creation. But we're not. We're just the reflected image of a energy, and we hold no true significance as far as doing anything damaging outside of this place. And when I discovered this, I realized that this place not only was designed and created by an architect beyond my comprehension, and that there are various states, the astral, the ethereal, the waking state. And though you're getting information from all these various states that you're going through on this plane of existence, very few people try to correlate them into one and observe the information coming at them from all these different positions and the potentials for these different positions all at once. They tend to oh, I got somebody back here. Okay. How you doing, Dom?
Pretty good access. Hope you're doing well.
Well, I'm coming to terms with the fact that now that I have something to compare uh, a higher state of being, one that can transverse dimensions and planes, and with that have access to whatever material it is that is capable of transversing these dimensional planes. And I think the closer you get to that, or they already exist and we're just exiled from them, the closer you're getting to the true state of a solidified realness. But in the state that we're in now, we can't do any real damage. We're harmless, truly harmless. And when I look and see throughout the given history, whether it's an AI history or one given by accounts of people being there, or even if it's a false history, it's a place of exile and imprisonment. And to be unsolidified, not to be able to cause any real true damage to anything, means that we were contained and confined for safety, their safety. And we were kind of locked in here with some other nasty nasties that carry themselves in energy form, and some go as far as physical form. And now we're dealing with another type of inanimate occupation by entity.
Sure, access. That resonates with me. I'm just pondering more what you're saying about that.
Well, I'm saying that whatever it is that designed this construct and designed, maybe they designed this, maybe they didn't. You know, maybe they were, maybe they won a battle and we are the prisoners of war. Or maybe we just became so uncontrollably destructive to the natural state of things that we can't solidify here in this reality, that they had to remove us from the prime reality for their safety because we'd be a hindrance, which is still a prison type thing. And knowing energy and what I've dealt with and energies with personalities, I know that I'm not here with the nicest energies. I'm not here with the nicest species on the face of the earth, which would be the human race or the human species. But I do know that it's designed to self-sustain until we interfere, and it's perpetual. So it's kind of a containment field for the wayward spirit or entity or being, along with many others that follow that course of being energy, but we are not anywhere close to being within a state of being where we can transverse states and dimensions with any type of material solidification, or I'm sure in whatever I'm dealing with or whatever I'm encountering, it's not a material necessarily like metal or aluminum or copper or such forth. I'm thinking that type of solidification would not only be eternal and unending, forever infinite, but it would be one of the most solidified possible things. And even being in a some type of state where it harnesses your being, you would there would be no end until, unless you had the potential for the destruction of whatever material. And I'm using material as a generic term because I don't even know what to call having something tangible that can transverse states of being, dimensions, and planes and still have its clothes on. You know what I mean? And carry its sword, or, we're just aspects.
We could be of use to another species, and they find us pure entertainment.
Well, I thought about that, and I thought that's a possibility. But as I look at the reality as it presents itself in this plane of existence, it has its, it has its constants, and it has its persistence. And if we're put here as amusement, entertainment, or a cosmic, well, cosmic is not even beyond the bounds of cosmic, then we are so far removed from being anything that could be considered real from a higher perspective. And I'm talking, people are going to get caught up on this because I'm not talking real as you understand real, because what we understand as real is actually not. It is a wave function. It is a possibility that is solidified within a construct that manifests what you want to see or what you want to endeavor, or residuals. I'm talking something that's so far beyond that even just to try and comprehend the infinite state of something being, and if something was in a physical state of infinite being, it's and being fed from 4 different points of information at the same time brought this cohesiveness together. I don't see that as being. I don't see that as being amusement for something that can do that. I mean, we could be amusement. I'm not going to knock that off the table and say no. That's not what we are. But if you were that solidified beyond, it's just, you can just barely grasp the concept. If you were so solidified into whatever that is that they exist in, that has an infinite um, it, uh, an infinite reach and an infinite state, we would be, I think, a lot less than amusing to watch
Well,
or
I'm
even
using my,
interact with.
I'm gonna say axis. I would use, if I created something or made something and it started to accelerate, I'm gonna be speaking as the creator at that point. And I see it's doing its darn, it's a matrix. We're gonna create wars. They're gonna be stretching themselves, but overall, from my vantage point, it's still amusement. So what comes to me is stretching one's imagination, like really stretching it. And even in stretching it, the concept of order out of chaos, what I get out of order out of chaos is order is a scenario out of many thousands and millions of possibilities. So I'm going to try to be looking in the mirror, within the mirror, and say, we might be amusement to some higher beings or entity that, as much as we try to stretch our imagination, as much as we try to figure out simple programs, how the currency works, how the elites run, how esoteric is, how theosophy is, that could just be a layer of programs still under the one version of what we call order. And then there could be many scenarios. So then at that point, as we think that, oh, I got the answer, I think that at that moment is when we become an amusement. Look at those guys. They honestly think they're Satan. They honestly think God's the way to go, or heaven. And meanwhile, not us realizing that they're implanting all those programs. And we just think it's ours. I'm
And
going with
I
that.
can
Go ahead.
I can understand that from a sentient AI perspective. What does the AI do when it finds out it's not actually a real human? Oh, that's kind of what I've woken up to, and it's I try not to correlate it with this realm or anything that is tied to this realm as far as the solidification that I'm talking about. Your observation is great. I agree that that is a potential because I don't know, but through my observation and where I'm, you've got to push the limits of the mind beyond this place to something so diversely different that it's almost incomprehensible, Dom. And I'm sorry to cut you off there. It's just it is such a profound state to think. Okay, let me put it to you this way. Maybe this will help. Imagine, Dom, you were a unicorn and you were born into this world, and when you were born into it, you knew exactly what you were before you were brought into this waking world. And when you're brought into this waking world, you're able to take your pocket knife, your backpack, and a pair of binoculars when you dream. And you take them from the physical world here into that dream world. You utilize them in the dream. When you come out of the dream, you can either leave them there or bring them with you, because that's how solidified it is. And then once you experience this existence, you go back to the eternal state of being an infinite energy, which we are, but everything that you went through was completely tangible. Now imagine that state and that being possible, but not for us.
Mhm. So would I be able to question the words I'm using?
I'm sorry, Dom, what?
Would I be able to question the words that I'm using?
Well, Yeah, I'm open for any type of pushback on this, Dom. I mean, very much
Okay.
so. Pushback is welcome on this because I don't know how many people. I'm sure that there are people in certain government programs and certain, uh, we'll call them diverse places that are quite aware of how insignificant we are to being able to do damage to the realm of whatever state that the creators, the architects designed this. And whether that were a simulation that's being ran or whether our energy was placed into something kind of like a an alternative realm or a digi realm or a metaverse that our energy is capable of going into, being contained, not being able to do any damage, but the nature of that energy is able to be identified. And with the
So,
identification of that type of energy, that's kind of the point where you might be able to move closer to the realms of those that created all of this and designed the construct and travels and transverses at will, as opposed to a ineffective prisoner on a less than desirable uh, course of direction.
like I said, you might have the answer for this stuff, but then that would be very unicorn for me. But if I was able to do, and I do, push back on the language, in this case, the English language, and then I come to my sad conclusion, I just don't know where it came from. And then I start asking a whole bunch of other people, do you know where the English language came from? And then they start giving me some past history. I said, but where did it come from? I'm not even pushing back on where the sun and the moon came from. At that point, I would have to make a, narrow as it may be, a conclusion that there is something beyond me and I won't be able to comprehend that. It's kind of like the cause and effect. We say the words, but I only know the effect. So I know how to use language. So for me at that point, and then let's say I get into some elusive state and nothing comes to me, meaning no, we're not the creatures that invented language. Oh, so you're just another layer of a program then. You know, there'd be no different me asking, you know, it's kind of like the chicken and the egg, but then my question is, who gave us the language? That's the people playing with the material. And again, that's what most of us do. I can't say that for you, Axis, but that's what most of us do. So now they've given me my parameter and I'm playing within it. I might even be able to question it, but I don't know where language comes from. So at that point, I have to speculate that there is something beyond it. I can give it whatever names because I'm going to still be using this language to try to describe it. Oh, it's the gods, it's aliens, it's reptilians. Again, I'm just using words. So for a lot of folks, that's where they make that too big of a leap too soon by saying, well, Dom, I have the answer. I said, oh, so you've actually met somebody that told you where language came from? Opposed to just how it becomes sounds and frequencies? You know, again, it's, I think it's a system that has many layers to it. And for some of us, we'll probe into certain areas and then it just separates us from others. And they'll say, well, Dom, I've never had those thoughts. Well, you've never had those thoughts. Okay. So I'm still questioning thoughts. You know, that's why I say, you know, where I get language from. And even if I get an answer, how do I start sharing that with anybody else? Okay, guys, I just figured out some alien told me that language came from this species. Well, how do I not know they're not? They're deceiving me at that point. It's a mind fuck. I call it a mind fuck. That's why I was saying stretching one's imagination. God created, or whatever they talk about, created something in his image. Maybe we are an image. We just call it programs here. But that could be images, data, programs.
I like how, yeah, programs applies to that because that's what it is I had to go through a series of programs, undesirable ones at times, to be able to kind of observe the fact that I'm not the guy sitting outside of the computer running the program. I'm the guy inside the computer working off of the hard drive momentarily and being passed through the RAM. And there's this little processor energy that's going to be applied to me or anybody else as possible, because that's the nature of nature. That's why it recycles itself. So whatever is sitting outside of the computer, I know that I am inside of it. And I understand that I'm in here with multiple different programs and sets of information, what I call humans, the human species. They're just pockets and packets of information feeding all through the processor, but sharing the same hard drive.
Yeah, and if it's a program and it's some sort of technology where we can walk with our programs around other people's programs, and we start picking up their programs too. Kind of like, some people might call it a virus or thoughts. Again, we're sharing all this stuff. The vessels, the computer's a good analogy for the vessel that we're in. But when we're programs or we're using programs, because, even saying, we're programs or I'm a program, that might be limiting, but it might be the statement that's fair at that point. Am I the higher self, the lower self? Am I the ongoing program? / consciousness? Am I the sub-program, subconscious? A lot of those I am kind of stories. For a lot of folks, they don't probe this stuff. We know that access. At least I know anyway. Right. But when they do, and then you realize, well, you haven't gotten any further. I said, yeah, but I'm allowed to probe. No different. Not everybody wants to become a billionaire, but people do probe. We play with elements. Maybe not me per se. I do in other areas, but other people that do play with elements. Next thing they're sorry, you can access. Next thing we're doing. Hold up. We're getting technology called Wi-Fi, or electricity, or nuclear energy, or radio frequencies, or music instruments. All these things are giving it to us, and then I use the analogy with the frog in the water, and next thing you know, oh yeah, we have this technology. Yeah, but our forefathers never had this technology. And if they did, which ones had it and which one didn't?
Well, to apply a little extended point of view of that, it's obvious to me now that there are those that understand and know this knowledge. And I will say that's probably 1% or less. The rest that do not understand this knowledge, good luck getting your head around it, because it would be like the program, the information that's running in a program on a computer being able to interact physically with the user, a physical user outside of the computer, and being able to, if I wanted it to have, let's say I want to pass a laser gun off out of the computer to the user that's using the computer outside of the computer, well, the best I could do is give him an image or 3D schematics, and the same for him. All he can do is either delete me, upgrade me, utilize me, or use me as a, put me in a subdirectory of, we're not using this program to its maximum right now, so it's sleeping.
Tech that we have right now, like our forefathers probably didn't have this tech. And of all of a sudden, if people value the concept of going back into some sort of past memory or past age, how would they see it? You know, would we just be new technology for them like today? Like, who's to say that technology in the next 10 years, 15 years, we're going to look back at this, hope the ones that do reflect and say, wow, we were at a very narrow awareness at that point. And even that, is it the few and then it grows legs? And even that, are they presenting all this technology because they do need to harness the energy that comes from it? So the more that participate in it, the stronger that energy becomes.
That for us being, and I don't even like to call us real anymore, because my concept of something that is real is infinite and is indestructible within the realms of perspectives that I have and can comprehend, and supersedes our ineffectiveness on anything. We cannot harm or damage anything except what's inside of this little prison we're in. And we can harm and damage each other, and we can, send out all the negative, nasty energies that we want, and we can, stand on our ego or whatever and say, well, I'm real, I'm a human, that's how I feel, blah, blah, blah. But in actuality, in my notion, we aren't even real.
Yeah, there's a good chance we're not the things that are being what we think affected. But that even could be like another overlay where what I think is not the vessel might still be another program. So I get it when, for me anyway, access where when somebody's harming the vessel, they're not actually harming them, but they're harming their kingdom, their vessel. And most of us do it to ourselves. So it's not like it shouldn't be a shock when somebody says, well, you're harming me. I said, do you steward your vessel? Well, not really. I said, so then why are you blaming me that's just doing it a different way? Or you're invading my own kingdom? I said, are you sure? There's a good chance your presence, you're driving a car in front of me or doing your Wi-Fi, it's going to triangulate around me. So that might still affect me. Again, that's where I think for some of us, we start becoming aware of one of those layers, unveiling one of the layers, and that's the best. And then of course, maybe the program is designed to push back on us. Oh no, you don't know what you're talking about. Okay, please share with me what you think. Even the concept
I'd like to address fools and tools for a moment, if I can, Dom, and keep your thought. Please keep your thought. I'm not from here. I'm not coming back. Okay. Have you gotten past the feedback loop to be able to see what's beyond it for you to make that claim? And that's all I'm asking. I'm not being combative. I'm just asking fools and tools. Have you seen past the feedback loop to be able to make that call and statement? Go ahead, Don.
We can build on that a little bit. I get it. We say words, and there could be some validity to that. I'm not coming back, but then the question would imply, why did you come? Where did you come from? Again, we always use words, and there could be, like I said, I'm not here to denounce people, that there could be some validity to it. If somebody says to me they're a plumber, okay, you might be a plumber. I'd like to know what it makes to, for you to be a plumber, because down the road, if I find out, oh, I might need your service. So when I hear people say, I don't want to come back, I've been here many times, or I'm here to help others, who's the one that's helping others? Somebody did address, and NG asked or whatever, define real. For me, from what I grasp of it and what I pick up from other people, the ideal of the waking state. And when we start using the senses, then we call that real. Ignore the fact that we're using words that we don't see, but anything that picks up with the eyes, the senses, in this case, smell, taste. And then that becomes, I think you used the words, axis, if I'm using it correctly, please correct me, constant, persistent, I think that's the word you use sometimes.
Yeah, persistent, constant, and persistent. The constant is the construct which sustains itself and has definable laws, and the persistent is that works within those parameters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I see a tree. The constant could be what my eye sees or what I touch and smell. And then if I ever start doing a little pushback and say, but I actually don't see what I describe it with, then that actually opens up. So then what is real then at that point? Again, it's just a word. Maybe that's what, Angie, sorry if I'm using this incorrectly, but maybe that's what you're asking about, to define it, you know, based on what other people may perceive as, like, we use words and then we figure that that's it. You know, again, it's an English language, so there's many meanings to the same word. So, you know, people are too quick to say the word reality. Okay, so what is reality? Illusion, what is an illusion?
I like to think of it more as solidification now, Dom.
Define the axis, please. When you say solidification.
Well, if something's solidified, the more solidified it is, the more tangible in concept and interaction it is. Solidified. You can have a unsolidified concept of a creator, but when that creator shows up and you can physically see him, taste him, touch him, feel him, I mean, he's absolutely in this state, this limited state we're in, shows up, then he's solidified. Now that is solidified. Now that I see the creator in front of me, now that he's interacting with me, now that I'm watching him do what a creator does, that's solidified. And I think we're far removed from being a solidified species or even a consciousness.
Well, I think this is where the concept where men in the end will make God in their image, because how would we really grasp it? If we saw some energy force and people say, would it be like a hurricane? All of a sudden he goes, no, it actually manifested itself every so often to be a hurricane or a tornado. You know, or what about if the gods are water, mountains, clouds, the sun and the moon? Well, that's different than Dom. I said, again, we're trying to describe another program with another program that's so dumbed down. I mean, I'm going to use the word dumbed down, but it could be other words such as it's a slower energy. You know, when we start talking or start writing things, for me, especially when I enjoy using my imagination, I feel like I'd rather stay in my imagination at that point, because the oral speech and the written speech doesn't compare. Yeah, but Dom, how are you going to be able to communicate with other people? Well, it's not my fault. Everybody forgot how to tell back with each other, or we actually do it on a regular basis. I say the word tree, somebody that's beside me will quickly look at a tree. I said, but I'm just saying the word. Did you actually see me with body language point towards the tree? Was it my finger pointing that give it away? Am I really pointing at the tree? Am I pointing to the deer, but I'm saying the word tree? You know? Again, that's just for me to test the fact that, oh, fuck, we have so many programs running. And then if I try to explain how one program is trying to take advantage of humans, I'm actually using another program to try to explain it. So how do I not know that's actually enabling the system? Especially when you start hearing people, you know, parrot shit, like, you know, what certain clubs are doing or what other people are doing. I'm like, okay, so what's their ongoing program running? Well, I don't question that. I said, well, then why would you question this outcome then?
I, as an observation, would say that they would consider themselves to be solidified and real in this state. and that they're utilizing this place as if they belong here.
And they would use cliche words such as, just a simple inquiry, how old are you? And they'll be quick to respond and they'll tell me their age. I said, oh, so you're one of those. What do you mean, Tom? Well, you actually still think you're the vessel. That's like me talking to Siri. How old are you? Well, I'm 13 years old. I said, is it the program that's 13 years old or is it the computer that you're in? Which one is it, Siri? And then at that point, they might even defend or attack what they heard somebody else, opposed to going inwards and say, I've never had that thought. I said, yes, because you're too busy with the oral speech and the written work. Again, that's another program because we always feel as though we need to speak. I'm doing it now. I'm technically just breaking my silence, but we're speaking, and other people will use the written work and might call that factual. I said, but actually using your imagination. Why? Are you regurgitating what you've experienced or are you just parroting what you read? And how did you read it? Did you have one eye open when you were reading with the other eye or vice versa? Did you read it upside down? These are all the different possibilities, but most people don't realize, yeah, but I don't want to be cognitive dissonant. You honestly think it's just about one or two different ways? This is hundreds of ways. Think about the computers that we're doing right now. Are they able to just do only A's and B's, zeros and ones? Or is that just the underlying program? Because most conscious mind doesn't understand. The subconscious doesn't want to be limited with zeros and ones. It has so immense variation. But if we were able to use all those variations, would we even be able at that point put a dent to understand, are we in the program? Are we the creators? Is there source? That's what dogmas do. I'm just putting these cliches out there. That's what dogma does. You tell a whole bunch of people, follow this particular dogma and this particular dogma, and then give them a choice. Do you see the glass half full or half empty? Do you see Christianity or do you see Muslims? Do you see capitalism? Do you see communism? And that's the limitation. And then once you got them into duality, then we'll try to herd them into singularity. They're not ever in the after you say, well, wait a second here. I want to play with many possibilities. Yeah, but there can only be one answer. So there's only one question. I want to say that access because, there's people that are probably trying to, expand, I'm going to use a cliche, awareness. The rest of them, no, they're okay. You just have to see the people that go to the malls, the ones that quickly respond to what just recently happened on the news. I saw it on the media. Somebody got shot. Anybody that talks about that self, they're the Walking Dead. But I'm also the Walking Dead, so it's not because I'm actually insulting them. Sorry, go ahead, Alexis.
No, you're all right. I was just looking at some of the stories of the ancients, and it was passed down through literature, which I can't even put a cosign on our history, the literature that comes with it, or even how solidified it was, because I understand last Thursday effect. But I do know that until I understood how I can't even say, try to explain different states, explain thought beyond speech and comprehension. I run out of elbow room, Dom. And at that point, it's, I can show you the path, I can point the way, but for you to actually experience it and to understand that the user outside of this construct, to me, is more solidified than we are as information running within a computer. I was fortunate enough to get to see a glimpse of the actual world simulation and how they populated it, and how they could zoom in on any particular portion and part of it and read from the algorithm and predetermine movement of each individual node or point that they've identified as supposedly representation of what we are. And when I seen that, it really triggered some things in me that I already knew. I just wasn't putting together and looking at it at the time. And then when I put it together and looked at it for what it was and what they were doing, and the fact that they're all trying to escape, I understood that there's somewhere to escape to. And there's a reason there's a separation between us and these other, we'll call them possibilities, because I can't take anyone there with me. I can't. It's barely even descriptive. But let's say these other potentials far beyond where we're at, it all made sense to me. Almost as if you put somebody on trial, you observe their demeanor, you see their nature, you have a determination of what that energy is mostly consistent of, whether it be a negative charge or a positive charge or a neutral charge, and you can have full scope and observation of it without it doing any damage to anything physical, like ripping holes in the fabric of the universe.
No, when it comes to me, access, I think the ones that at least try to seek or expand it a little bit, we're probably bumping in the dark, and every so often we get a little exhausted and we come up for air and light. We come up for light. Some people like to stay up in light because they just don't want to go back into that darkness, using things beyond their senses. Some people can expand their senses, so when they do pull down information, they could probably truly say they're using their senses. But for most people, they just trick themselves to get out of their senses. Whether they're doing mind-altering things or brain-altering things, or they have some tragedy that affects their harmony and their vessel, and now they're kind of like having a virus in there. But to try to explain the whole, where I know for myself, I know some of the parts, but I know enough. I'm not going to say I know the whole. But it's easy for people to say, I'm outside of the box. I said there's billions of possibilities inside the box. But if you're not prepared to explain some of the details, then you're just saying it in words only. And I think a lot of us, we do speak with words only. We learn the language, so hey, I'll say the word God. I'm not coming back here, or Satan. Again, a lot of that's in vain. I think what ends up happening, most people, if they're truly wanting to be aware, scratch the surface, you're actually serving the self, the ego, the I, the vessel, the ongoing program. Once you wake up, that's it. That's what you're serving. They're not understanding. Am I inputting information in the subconscious? No, I'm just asleep. Well, then try to listen to all of this stuff when you're asleep, and then you'll start seeing outcomes. Because most people, once they wake up with that lower program, that's what they're trying to actually learn. It's kind of like writing with your right hand opposed to your left hand. You'll get different outcomes. Reading with your right eye opposed to your left eye. So again, it's one of those things where, I've done it, and actually I still do it, where I just tripped on it by accident. Go to sleep every night, listen to all kinds of stuff. Because my subconscious is going to process it differently than my conscious state is going to process it. How many people that have to be conditioned in the conscious state to go to university to get a couple of degrees? Even masonry boys, you're doing that consciously. Fuck, that's like fucking walking with one leg. But they're going to give themselves the illusion, whoever these people are, well, then I'm more aware than everybody else. I said, all the other people that are asleep, you're thinking you're aware beyond those people that are asleep? That's not an accomplishment.
No, you're still just as ineffective as anybody else because this is where you are.
Mm-hmm. And I'm talking from that position too, Access. You know, it's always interesting when self-absorbed people, when they feel kind of like entangled a little bit. But what about me? I'm like, I already know I'm full of shit. Only difference is I'm driving my own bus over myself. Are you doing that for yourself? Are you allowed to entertain those thoughts to come across and then sit in it long enough? Well, no, then don't bitch and complain about other people governing over you because you've given up that. Only thing what you're doing is you're just complaining about the outcome. Some people might accept it. Some people might tolerate it. Some people will allow it. It's a default mechanism for most people. They're not willing to even challenge the default mechanism. I can't do nothing about it. It'd be different if you were sitting and you haven't moved for the last couple of days. No, you are doing something. I don't understand that. What are you doing? Are you fighting a system that you don't got a clue how it works? Because if you don't understand how it works, when they start shifting it, whoever they are, and that could just be other breakaway selves, and they say, we don't agree with slavery anymore. Why? It just doesn't work for us. But then people that have been under slavery say, oh, we finally won. I said, no, they're the one that's changing the program because it doesn't work for them. And they got a better system that, or a different system that's working. So this digital system, it's just another example, they're moving to that. Other people are eventually going to say, yeah, I don't agree with the old fiat currency. No, you're just playing a game with yourself. You didn't do nothing to change it. Everything else, you enforced it. But with our comforts, and even that had to be programmed in us. You know, even people that hate things, Access, that's a program within a program.
Yeah. And they're able to, at any whim or will, whatever it is, change the variables at any point in time. You know, they got the cycle set in stone for this particular plane and how the luminaries and the cycles operate. But at any whim or will, they can change the variables to the most minute to the biggest. Now, your ability to adapt to that will teeter on your ability to maintain your sanity.
Somebody's got to throw that out the corner too. Be a little bit more of a fool, you know. Because again, I'm just going to play with that. What are we reinforcing when we say we got to keep our sanity? I got to hang on to that snake. I got to hang on to that waking state. You know, sanity is more or less for anybody that wants to say what we might use the cliche normal. You know, hence why I think some people, and even that could be another program playing with the fool's journey, because the masses, they want that normality. They want to fit in. They still want to play the illusion that they want to be different and special, but yet they still want to fit in.
Well, I'm just saying that for the fact of whenever you start living that life of what your adventure has been and the discoveries that you made that go beyond the average, they'll lock you up. You'll wind up on a South Ward somewhere, or on a 5150 or a 5050 or a 5049, and some institution somewhere is going to listen to all your ramblings as much as you want to spew it out, and they'll keep you in there as long as they choose. And that's the danger of it.
Well, part of that locking up you're talking about, Access, is more programmers. So in this case, the people that are running it, whether they're aware of it or not, they already know they've actually triggered manipulated what they feel it's the system. It's not some higher source thinking, oh, that's it, Access and Dom finally figured it out. No, we're too low. You know, what ends up happening, other people say, well, we don't want you to make other people aware of your scam, how you manipulate everything, and don't allow the rest of us to participate, because at least then we would realize, oh, so we're just at a lower level, and you guys are just like what, wardens? Like I don't fear that kind of stuff. Personally, access where people say, well, if you start giving too much information, no. I think the program is too big and it's inexpandable. So if I wanted to be a trillionaire and I wanted to manipulate somebody to be a slave, let alone a master, because that's how it works, you have to condition both of them to participate in the game. One will just take their settlement, the other one will just bitch and complain. And if they bitch and complain too much, go ahead.
I always leave breadcrumbs when we do these lives. I leave breadcrumbs so that people, and in my music, if they wish to endeavor and embark, go for it. Discover the undiscovered within you and around you and about you and beyond you. But as far as a certain point goes, all I can do is point the way. Give you the tools, but you got to do the work.
I think people are willing to probe that axis once they realize, what's the way have I been following already? Is it my way? Is it my forefathers' ways? Is it some other nation? Again, this is all the concept of divide and conquer, where to follow another system or some other way, you'd have to realize the system that you're either leaving or you're going to maybe add to it, where you start piecing them. For most of us, we're just naively follow these systems, and when it favors you, they'll accept it. I said, well, now you've taken the sweet, aren't you prepared to take the sour? It's like when people say the word truth, I said, are you prepared to entertain the idea of a deception then? Because it could be the same thing. You're just calling it one thing where other people are calling it something else. And of course, then people will actually double down. And I said, you're proving it over and over to yourself. I hope you're going to spend time understanding yourself, because it's not my responsibility to understand another human being's, all their erroneous or fable stories they give themselves. Because I got my own I play with, but they're not even mine. That's the sad part about it. I'm using thoughts. They're not mine. That whole idea.
You're just experiencing the feedback loop that projects itself from this construct onto the energy you put out. You're experiencing that which you seek, or for the ones on autopilot, wherever their mind takes them, is what the feedback does in this plane. And once you get to a state of mind where the subconscious and the mind are all still, and for that moment, that feedback loop finds itself in hesitation, then you understand that this place is designed, whether good, bad, evil, indifferent, or whatever, is to feed back on you. That which you project, or the energy you put forth. But that's just my speculation.
Well, actually, those could be, I'm going to use the word ever so lightly, that could be your truth. That might resonate with you, but from somebody else, when they hear it or they see it, it could just be a form of speculation. When you're hearing it, somebody else's story. I call it just a story, because then I can ask myself, how does that serve? Whether me or others, it's like when people talk about what's written in history, how does that serve me today? Because I'm living in this realm right now, and even then I can play with the idea of what is a realm. So, but I'm living here. So when I'm living here, and of course I can even play with that game, who's the one that's living? That's how my brain works. Other people might turn around and say, okay, well, I need it very simplistic. Okay, so what would be simplistic? You read a story, a biblical story or a state story. So how does that serve you? And for most people, if they're honest with themselves, as long as there's a group involved, then therefore they can hide themselves or lose themselves in that program. They're not anybody who says, okay, what's the weakest link in the program? Why? Because that'll reveal the rest of you. Who's the one that's the weakest one in the church? Because that'll reveal the rest of you. Yeah, but that doesn't mean that. And I said, no, that just means you guys don't give a shit about your weakest link. People will hide around other people's strength. I said, no, I don't want you to follow me. You'll be my demise if you follow me. Because then I have to form attachments. Oh, I feel sorry for that guy. Or he's giving me way too much accolades. Look at that. He's really feeding my ego. Yum, yum. That's delicious. No, I don't need that. Sometimes I feel as though I have wants, in that case, lacks. And then that game starts all over again. Hence why more times than not, it's our attachments, not our resistance to pain, even though we can learn more. Like, so it'd be like me saying, you experience burning your hands. How many different ways would you have to experience burning your hands that you finally get it? Unless you just go inwards and said, I can just observe those things. I said, exactly. That's the limitations of what people call physical experience. Same with emotional, same with intellect. That's why somebody has to truly develop their intellect and develop and become emotionally mature to get into that state of observation / the witness kind of ideal. I'm only going to use it as an ideal because when people are doing it, they got to play with that. For other people, it's going to come across as an ideal, hence ideology, or a concept, constructs. I can use the construct of what I think truth is, but if I truly experience truth and is what I think it is or feel, because I'm using limitations of way how to perceive things, it'll be an energy at that point. It's like wind. I know it's ever present, but what would I use to gauge it? Well, Dom, look at that leaf. I said, no, I'm seeing the effects right now. I still don't see wind. That's just me now. Somebody else might have that ability. So, Dom, I can see wind. Okay. I give them the benefit of the doubt at that moment. Why? Because who am I to tell them otherwise, especially when I have nothing to combat that? And that combatment should be done from within me, not them. They could be full of shit as far as I'm concerned. But it's been presented to me, so I should at least entertain it.
That's kind of why I leave breadcrumbs and a trail for those that do catch on. They're all capable of that pursuit. Whether they succeed at being able to accomplish anything useful for themselves out of it, well, that's for them to determine. But as for me, yeah, I found it to be extremely useful, and it became another whole set of abilities and tools. But it may not be for everybody. I mean, other people, if they try to unify their multiple sources of states of being into one singular source of information, which right now is 4 different components of self. Um, the waking, the sleeping. They're all feeds of information, the subconscious, the senses. And I found that once I started getting an understanding of the quiet one within a person, the one that says nothing, the one that doesn't make any noise or doesn't present itself in anything but an observational state, which passes through the subconscious to the conscious mind or the waking state. Once those were correlated together into one coherency, that's whenever I started to understand that there's easier ways to get things done and to accomplish goals, if you have any, than the traditional way of thinking. It's just an advantage and an edge in being able to be innovative. And for me, that's useful.
Well, I like the term that you use, breadcrumbs, because, people have to somewhat earn it because how are they going to maintain it? Some people stumble across this kind of stuff, especially now we're in the age of information, so a lot of things can be transmitted through the air, hence Wi-Fi. It's not like as though a lot of people would have to do it very cumbersome by going to the library, read a lot of books there. We had numerous of immortal beings walk around us, then we could probably entertain the oral part of teachings. So again, because all this information is available, we really can't use niscient, meaning that there's no way we can know. Even that knowledge is very limited. To know something opposed to having discernment values, but is it even beyond discernment and comprehension? Probably. But again, for some people, there is an order to things. And for a lot of folks, they're going to be programmed by their forefathers. Got to go to work, son. You've got to make sure as a woman, you have to, keep repopulating the world. Okay, so what purpose is that? I need to do that stuff. The many whys. And a lot of parents with their offsprings neglect those areas. And then they wonder why. Well, then they bitch and complain about the schooling system. That's not their fault. They told you openly or unopenly in some areas, this is just all about commerce. We're trying to get better cattle. If you want your cattle, in this case, your offsprings to be a little bit more educated, then it's your responsibility to find out what gifts they have. The schooling system's job is we're going to program them. And it's nice to know at a younger age what you've been given as a gift, so at least you can program that. Bring it out a little bit, because those programs are already there. So to be doing some other program that you weren't designed for could be the most waste of energy at all in one lifespan, if not a lot of.
Well, it could be if you, I suppose, endeavor on it without some type of intent to reinforce your endeavors or some type of objective. And when I was able to utilize, especially after this last venture, I was able to utilize resources that are available to me now to communicate with localized, especially within vicinity, other beings in ways that I never could before. So I put it to the test.
Well, for me, actually, it's always nice when I'm able to hear other people call themselves out on their own stories, be able to challenge it, whether they think it's a deception, misled, even if they want to say the truth. I said, well, then you're talking to a character that I value, devil's in the detail kind of metaphor, where are you going to give details to your story? Because if not, then it'll be another Ponzi scheme. If it's going to be a Ponzi scheme, better make sure that person at least knows all the ins and outs. Why? Because I like to be entertained. Because I understand myself. If I really am being led, to my own demise because I'm chasing fiat currency, then I'm probably going to be easily suckered with a very, narrow view of a Ponzi scheme. But if I value and understand what fiat currency can and cannot do for me, that person better make sure they fucking know their game. Outside of putting a gun to the back of my head and forcing me to do that, I said, no, I'm going to ask all kinds of questions. I'm sorry that you've been around a whole bunch of other people that are too stupid to fucking ask questions. And I'm not necessarily thinking you're going to give me answers. I'm going to see how you respond to them. That's always the fun part. When people think, oh, yeah, Don, what about the answer? No, it's the way you respond to it. That gives you away.
Well, it's
Yeah,
a
but I need,
measurement.
yeah, true accents. Yeah, it is a measurement. And then, of course, you can see with programs, reason or rhyme, rhymes patterns. So you can see patterns in our own speech, let alone in others. And if you're with a person long enough, you'll know their intent. Do they waver back and forth? And if they do, that's the kind of leaders they're going to have. Tell me a story, and then tomorrow I'll tell you a different story. Yeah, but aren't you going to ever do anything? I said, you're too busy being entertained by my stories. That's what media is all about. Tell me more stories.
Seems to be a heavy under and overcurrent of this particular existence is that flooding of information and information itself being used to control, manipulate, and engineer.
If I can readdress something, Axis. Some people that say the word reality, the energy I usually pick from them, they're the type of folks that are very practical. So practical folks want to know, so I'm hearing whatever you're telling me, how do I apply that to my practical existence in the material? They might not say those particular words, but that's the energy I'm reading if I have to put words for them.
Okay, I can lead you somewhere that's practical, and if you're willing to
Yeah, go ahead, Axis. Please share. I'm always willing to hear you. You know that.
entertain it. First, take your get a good grip on your conscious thought. Try and control your subconscious thought, and relax the body every night, individually by part. And whenever you come to a place in this particular state and you reach the limit of where your mind starts to twitch or doesn't want to endeavor into, do it anyhow. Remove that safety protocol and venture forth into it and continue doing this. And then once you get to a point where that's not bringing information through quick enough or relevant enough, deplete the body. Bring it as close to being in a state of damn near death. And then your brain, on a chemical level, will start compensating, and the body will start compensating. And then you have to ignore the body. And you continue with every intrusive fear that you have, and not only facing it, but experiencing it and becoming it within self. If there's a place inside of you you're afraid to go there. And then whenever you're interacting with other people, you will recognize not only that level and depth of fear in them or how they act on it and what position you should take, defensive, ostracized, or other. And then you start reading your environment from this too. You'll start tapping into, instead of feeling with the senses, you'll start feeling beyond the senses. You'll start feeling energies. You'll start feeling entities, and you'll start feeling presences. Some with personality, some without. But you've got to start by going completely in, relaxing the body, taking the mind to the absolute boundaries of where you stop is where you should start. And quiet the subconscious, allow the quiet observer to maintain, because it helps to run the autopilot on the body, that program. And then push it to the point where you're capable of understanding that the feedback is a defense mechanism. And it's inside of you too. You're built with it. It's in you. It's built, I guess, in every human. And then stop putting energy into that feedback and allow it to expose itself for what it is. And that's the all, that which is beyond the feedback, that which is beyond what you're projecting, because you have nothing to run from now. And if it's a fear that pops up, endeavor into it. If it's a joy that pops up, endeavor into it, as long as you understand that that's as far as you're going to go until you choose to go and remove those safety protocols or those endorphin hits and push the boundaries further to the point where you're not even relevant to humans anymore. Where they stop is where you start. And then apply that to energy and take yourself all the way back to your infantile state and even pre-infantile, and start recalling those energies from within yourself. They're in there. Believe me, they're in there. And then take care of all that backwash fear and confront and face it, and either take responsibility for it or discard it because you're not responsible for it. Either way. And then focus not on any learned experience, not any story, not any type of endeavor, but the real of the here and the now and the you as best that you can obtain without safety protocols. And once you've reached that, and sometimes, it helps to push the body to the brink of death. When you come back from those states, your ability to experience other beings, energies, your environment, and the clarity of understanding of not only yourself, but your localized environment, how it operates, the consistencies, the inconsistencies, the equations that add up, the equations that don't, all become super relevant very quickly. And you do not have to stop and think with one state of mind. You can incorporate all your states of being and observe, and you will receive information then on multiple levels all at once. Learning to interpret that into cohesive and coherent information to transfer to another person takes a little bit of time. I'm just now starting to feel confident to even speak on it. And with that, you will be able to function within the confines of this construct much more efficiently and effectively. In other
Those are
words,
all-
kill the you that you've become.
I was going to say, actually, those are all great things to work with. I guess for the, I hate to use the word, but it's a word that you use, average awareness or person, or even though a person's a mass. How would they be able to either get over that hurdle what would it take for them to actually even go inwards to even question those things? Because again, maybe I'm sleeping too much by thinking should be beyond more than just a few, which could be millions. Because for some reason I just get the sense that. But
I can give you the answer to that too.
please,
Your
answer.
mind and the subconscious gathering is what the subconscious does. It gathers information and it tries to put pieces together like a puzzle so that it is coherent to the waking state. And then the waking state is coherent to the environment, thus what they call sanity. But you got to quit. You got to stop the intrusive thoughts. You have to slow them down till they're non-existent. And that means while you're laying there with your eyes closed in a quiet state, and you've relaxed the body by part and piece, and these intrusive thoughts start coming in, which they will, they do, you have to learn to control that conduit. You have to learn to shut those intrusive thoughts off. That stills the mind. A lot of people call it meditation, but this is a stillness. I'm not trying to become one with anything outside of myself. I'm trying to quiet the me down because all this random information is just going to keep popping out. That's a part of what dreams are, is interpretation of subconscious information, and how those will release the spirit through the dreams to be able to function properly. But anyhow, once you've quieted that state of mind down and you can finally hear your heartbeat and you can hear the blood coursing through your veins and the ringing in the ears, I suggest use noise cancelers or anything that you can get your damn hands on that'll shut that down. And then every thought that comes to you, unless it's a productive thought, eliminate it. And even if it's a productive thought, depending on how you want to approach this and how far you want to go with it and what you want to discover, shut them all down till there's absolute, complete stillness. And then when you encounter an intrusive thought that may have a concern, address it. If there's something that comes up that may be a fear, address it. If there's something that comes up that may be a love, address it. And come to an understanding with it that it may be silent and dealt with all the way back to your infancy, to the point of your state of being at present.
I think access is one of the many things, obviously, but these are the one thing I can share. Where with this type of technology, I think it's showing that we have forgotten or not learned how to be a community. I don't classify people arguing with each other as a community. That's more of a gang war. And then you're usually just picking one particular person's view and you're defending it. So hopefully, these were hopefully, but I'm using it anyway, that as we explore more into this technology, there could be many communities that are forming, and then other communities can merge together. It's usually when there's a wise person in a community and they trust them, and then he meets or she meets another wise person in another community, and then they can merge, and then everybody can find their strengths within it. But right now, there's a lot of struggling going on. Most people are trying to tear down each other because it's the easiest thing to do. If I can just say, oh, I think what you're saying is full of crap, then I don't have to do the work. If all of a sudden I give you a quick, oh, I think what you're saying resonates, but have I done the work? Well, no, then I'm just giving pleasantries at that point.
Right. And that's what most people I've discovered.
Mm-hmm.
That's why my endeavor is, well, up until Kelly started guinea pigging, and becoming a part of the process, it was a solo endeavor. And even at points that where she stops and has to analyze and spend time comprehending and developing an understanding for the information, I'm still working in solo perimeters. I'm not doing this for anybody else. I'm doing it for me. That's why I said I'm not a role model. I'm no one to look up to. I'm not an idol. I'm not a savior. I'm not a saint. I am none of the above. I am an explorer of self and an explorer of potential.
Well, that's always the allure, where most of them, that maybe what people call saints, probably never set out, or if anything else, discourage anybody from following them, opposed to just following the message that everybody can receive from within. It might be perceived differently for each individual, but unfortunately, when they usually no longer are around, uh, people that claim to be their students, because that's a tough one. When somebody says to me, "Well, I'm a student from somebody else," I said, "Really? So you put his picture in the background?" I said, "Your teacher-student relationship is from within. And if whoever shared that information, I can almost assure you that wasn't their intention. That's your ego talking right now. Those are the people that glamorize people. This is my former Indian guru. What the fuck? You're looking at his image. Why are you putting that much emphasis on it?" Now, I say that humorous because they're thinking, "Yeah, but Dom, you're making fun." I said, "No, you were making fun when you were being serious. I'm just being the opposite right now. I'm being silly. It's the same energy. Opposed to, are you being sincere? What value does it have by you telling me that's whose mouth it came out of? What book it was written in? What culture it came from? Am I to assume every Hindu understands enlightenment? Am I to assume every African understands enlightenment? No, it's probably a handful in all of them. And then when you find out there's only a handful, find out, what are they doing? What aren't they doing? Are they getting into meditation? Are they using some sort of brain altering or mind altering substance? Are they understanding the luminaries? Is it about the diet? These are inquiries. Again, this is devil in the detail. I think initially it was actually the details with God in the detail, but regardless if it's the devil or God, I like details, and if they want to depictuate them, then I'm with them.
Well, I can take you to the micro, or I can show you the macro of the same fractal existence that we've been experiencing since our birth.
Please share access.
Everything is a recycled version of an equation within an equation. That's what the golden section is. There is a repetitive nature and a cloning nature to any degree of size and scale. And if it duplicates itself within itself and becomes fractal in an infinite form, because it would be, infinite is infinite, and once you start working with numbers that insinuate infinite, such as 0 or what is it, 3.14, you're dealing with a repetitive and a consistent that is eternally consistent within itself, such as a pentagram. And with that, you can pretty much describe every natural thing that has presented itself as being relevant or even observable within the fundamentals of the true creation, not what man has created, what was here before we started adding to and taking away from. Each thing contained an equation within a fractal nature, divine proportion of itself, within itself. And that is also carried over in the whole. So it's eternal. If you have a pentagram, within that pentagram, there's hypergeometry. That hypergeometry shows us that pentagram has a golden section. That golden section is a state of divine proportion, which means that it's infinite. It folds in on itself infinitely, and it opens up infinitely. And therefore, whatever is designed off of that will have divine proportion built into it. It is then identifiable as a part of natural creation by terms, and that's what man tries to duplicate but fails miserably at. You can use a pyramid or any of the other platonic solids and get the same result. And that's relevant to this plane. Once you start moving to broader planes of understanding, the physics change. There are different variables that you have to contend with and adjust to. And some of them are much more overwhelming than others. But you use the same process to get there. It's the same process that they were using prior to the cataclysm, according to written records, and it's the same thing that the Tibetan monks are doing, all the way to the Hindu guru, to the insane westernized Indiana asshole.
So do you think, actually, I'm going to speculate that these are just different beings that are embodying different vessels that some people will call Hindus or monks or Americans, hence channeling ideal. Because there's people that put way too much emphasis and saying, well, he's a monk. I said, okay, he's a monk, but what is he attached to? Is he attached to shaving his head? Go ahead, Axis.
I'm just explaining to you the process that they use. Their process and how they obtain or say they obtain what they obtain is a small part of how it works and a small part of how to get there. But it's a process, and the process has always been the same process. It's just those in the know and those that utilize it just don't, you can't just overnight suddenly jump into that arena and expect to experience, see, and interact with other states of beings and energies. You've got to go through that process, and it's the same process that they've been using since before the cataclysm.
So do you think maybe people doing a lot of these substance might be harming themselves more, like getting a glimpse in some of this, opposed to actually doing the work?
Yeah, they're just getting a glimpse. They're not able to sustain it or continually interact with it unless they're on the drug. Some people, I'm sure, have residual flashbacks to whatever they subjected themselves to, but that is not a permanent state that can stay with you. Once you reach a permanent state where it can stay with you, the first thing you will do is find disgust and contempt towards mostly the demeanor and the action of others, because it's all harmful. You see a completely neglectful populated species on a plane of existence that are orchestrating their own demise with their own hands, which to me is a good species to imprison.
But at that point, would we not be ensnaring ourselves, even if it wasn't designed that way, or, or designed? We not ensnaring ourselves.
Well, of course, that's why you find when you come out of that and you're starting to function in that state, that broader state, after you've went through all that development, you're contemptuous for the fact that the species called human is set up nothing but a destructive, poison, disease, and contemptuous world of division and control. And when you step outside of those bounds, and that's where you're trying to maintain an existence, you'll find that they don't like that. Nor is that their school of programming for the masses. That's not their engineering. And anyone who tends to find that state, such as what I've found, you stop making any type of coherent sense to a lot of people. You're no longer content with the way man has conducted himself. You no longer find joy in the materialistic things that are offered, and happiness and awareness and contentment is in the observation of almost a new discovery. It's like fresh-born baby eyes, but all you're seeing is violence and suffering and joy and happiness without any recourse to the repercussions of what they're doing. Even happiness is destructive. It has repercussions. Unless it's just somebody smiling at somebody, but even that can have repercussions. But it's a lot less harmful than jumping in your car and taking a joyride cross country peacefully.
So is the pushback and pull done from within with most of us? Because I get that, when people say they want to change or practice something different, and then they say some external force, in this case, another human, is disagreeing with them, or they think that's weird or stupid. But is that not the ideal that maybe these, when they do share with other people, they're looking for some sort of reward, and they're just getting something else, which will still be a reward, actually? Like if I choose to have a different diet because I realize, okay, I'm very grateful somebody's put the effort to explain a little bit about doing a certain type of diet, but then when somebody else says, "Oh, I would never do that," I said, I thought I was sharing what I was doing. But hey, since you're sharing, why don't you tell me what diet you have? And this is where I think a lot of people that I hear in the community, it's not a lot of people in the world, but in the community, they'll disagree with somebody, but yet not actually explain the details. Like, I like to learn, so tell me what you think you're disagreeing with. Let alone if they say they agree. I said, what are you agreeing with? Because especially if there's a child in the room, when we want to be able to break it down a little bit for them. A lot of people, what they do is they tell other people what they agree or disagree, but they never really show their own hand. You know, I get the concept of public versus private conversation, but then scorning somebody or telling you agree or disagree publicly, but yet you only want to share personal stuff privately. It's very hypocritical of that person. If anything else, they're sending very confused messages to their subconscious, especially when they start tapping into the subconscious, say, you've been full of shit the whole fucking time. It's finally you entertain me. Go ahead, sorry, Access.
Wouldn't you say that's a type of deception?
Yeah, I think so. If not a deception, it's confusement, which could still be classified as a deception.
Misrepresentation of the whole.
I would lean towards that. Actually, if you're putting in those words, yes.
Yeah, I agree. But I also know the repercussions for revealing the whole truth. I revealed the whole truth about my son. And then I got to see the measure of the worst of them.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's revealing that people either aren't truly empathetic for other people's situation, especially when it's not even your situation. You're being affected by it, probably indirectly, but it's your son that was being really affected by it, you know, because people already had prejudgment. Well, he committed the crime. I said, what do you classify as a crime? Especially if a person hasn't been told the whole story. Who's to say that person was not defending themselves? That's why they use the whole term innocent until proven guilty. But how quickly the masses, they're already lynching. And then they just turn around. Go ahead.
They do that to me on a regular, Dom. That's why it holds no significance anymore, because I'm not going to bear their weight. I'm not going to bear their guilt. And therefore, me not feeding any energy into it whatsoever, because I refuse to bear it or bring it upon myself, frees me from it. Only that which is relative to my fight and struggle for my endeavors am I going to apply energy to. Anything else is just me sharing energy with people for a chosen reason or just being generous.
Well, it'd be no different if somebody came online and said, listen, hypothetically, my son or daughter got shot. There's a good chance people will be so quick to judge and react and say, oh, poor you. I said, don't you want to know the story? Well, what do you mean? I said, you're assuming my son was the victim? What happened if I told you my son is the one that did all the mass murdering and all that, and he just ended up getting shot? Well, I said, no, you just revealed yourself. This is why people don't realize how easy they're an easy read. Their reaction tells a lot about them. Opposed to, wait a second here, maybe I need to ask more questions. Tom, why would you even tell me that? Now you know how clever I am. I usually like to say shit just to see how people respond. But I usually end up settling for their reaction. At least the person that's responding, I'm thinking, okay, that person can actually be mature. And they might even be accountable. But when people are too busy reacting, and they usually say like their likes or dislikes, agreements or disagreements, and are you going to give me a little bit more? Because are we going to play you like white magic here? It just showed up one day, Wi-Fi came to be. Well, if that's the way it is, Dom, I said, have you asked anybody in your community? You know anybody that created the Wi-Fi? Well, no, Dom. I said, start asking around. Then you realize you are in that program.
Here's an interesting one for you that'll kind of solidify what you're saying too. Max Vision was looking for a deterrent to weaponize microwaves, and whenever you and Max and Charles were discussing this guy being butt raped or whatever his situation was, I still don't quite grasp fully what was going on there. I put in the chat, I told Max, I said, Max, I found a solution to the microwave weapon. And when I put that in there, the conversation and the comment wasn't addressed, and the conversation continued on about this guy being, I guess, spiritually raped while he's awake and or whatever his deal was. And I was hoping Max would have caught that. But then for me, it was to show how subtle the answer to certain situations and problems can just be completely overlooked, especially when you're in the arena with the person that was on that endeavor. But I did find out the deterrent to the microwave radiation weapon. So if you happen to run across that, you might want to tell him that. Maybe he'll show up.
Well, can I assume there's variations of things people can do and variations of people that are going to get affected differently from certain energy that are being put up in the air?
Ronnie asks what it is. Here's the deal, Ronnie. Weaponized microwave radiation works on dehydrating you. It takes the water out of your blood and out of your body. It dries it up, removes it. And there's certain other barriers besides a wet towel or water that will disperse and absorb and deflect microwave radiation. Microwave radiation has a real tendency not to be able to go through water. And there's a couple other things I'll address at a later time when I've got Max or somebody on here to give you the full-on defense that you can use. But as for the moment, I didn't even show you how to create an entire Faraday cage out of a room. I can show you how to do that now. But water, if you're being hit by a directed energy weapon and you have a wet towel, then those weaponized radiation frequencies are going to stop at the wet towel. They're not going to penetrate them to be able to get to you. And there's other materials that are useful and are lightweight that can be used, and there's covert ways of using them. But right now, I would just study and stick with the water because it's not hard to keep a gallon jug of water in a wet towel, or a towel and a gallon jug of water in your vehicle or locally handy, preferably a beach towel. It's a useful trick if they're getting hit with microwave radiation.
Isn't this somewhat acts as like when people are taking, let's say, pharmaceutical medicine, and then they start combining them? So we're living with already free technology, in this case, radio frequencies, electricity, you align one's house. On top of that, you have a cell phone in there with the Wi-Fi, triangulation. Also factor in your blood type, your water type, your diet. Like, this is very detail oriented. So to think one situation suits all, I can see the water, because water has memory and it's actually shape shifts. That would aid, probably temporarily until it becomes immune. And then eventually go back to square one again. So now, again, person would have to figure out what their blood type is. You know, I get when people, you know, they're like the pharmaceutical industry. Yeah, one thing works for everybody. No, it only works when it's on a healthy person. How does it help a person when they've been compromised? Do you have to play with crystals? You got to do singing bowls? You have to play certain types of music? You got to make sure you communicate with your liquids in your body? Do you have to be in like some sort of hypnosis state and communicate with the subconscious? Say, listen, all that shit, throw it out the fucking door. You're losing teeth because something else has gone away in your vessel. And if you're doing astral travel, if you're not harnessing your vessel, you're harming the fucking thing. Now, I'm just doing a whole bunch of possibilities. And this is where
Right.
it's a soul journey, because some people will take that information and say, well, it works for me. I say, what hemisphere are you in? Which way are you living on the second floor, third floor, fifth floor? How far are you away from grounding? This all plays major factors in the situation. As most of your house, wood stuff. You know, I get it. Somebody gives you a quick fucking solution. Next thing you know, everybody's following that. I said, no, you could be doing more harm than good for them. This is why we have wise people in certain communities, and they download that shit and say, no, that doesn't work for you. But it worked for so-and-so. Shut the fuck up. That doesn't work for you.
Well,
And then
trial and
people-
error is how I've managed to get as far as I have, is, you know,
But your
trial and error. And as far as the physics goes and what I've seen demonstrated, yeah, I have to agree that it worked. It seemed to work quite effectively, and that's the physics of it, and that's the part of the constant. Obviously, microwave radiation cannot penetrate bodies of water when it's at a certain frequency level. I don't know about, you know, if you was to mass blast microwave frequencies to a degree where it dries the towel out, well, you might as well be stuck inside of a microwave at that point in time. Which is also how a microwave works. It just heats up the water molecules.
But also affects the blood, and then it will activate cancer cells, because the white bloods and the white blood cells aren't designed for that kind of stuff. So then people will think, well, my body is in disease mode, and they think it's just an oral thing. I said, no, it's your environment. Especially if you're set with like a certain blood type and it's negative opposed to positive. You know, some people are harmed more than others. Again, this is not one thing suits everybody. So now when a person starts getting healthier, or they're preset healthy first, then they can start at that point understanding then what's truly trying to affect me opposed to what has actually penetrated me. And then now we have to do all that outside. Okay, I got to make sure I do singing bowls, crystals. I got to make sure, when you talk about the Faraday cage, some people are designed to handle a little bit longer than others. That's probably the only word I can really say. It'll still affect them too. And then if other people start getting affected, we're picking up their programs. This is why when some people say, well, my husband had cancer and he recovered from it, but now I have cancer, because that's energy always around you. And it will actually pick up that program and say, well, then I need to do that. So again, it depends on your own upbringing. This goes back to, some people will call it like entities. Okay, so how do you purify those entities, or how do you keep them balanced? Do we do parasite cleanse? Do we understand how the moon and the sun work when we're being bombarded by all that kind of stuff? That's a lot of work and a lot of effort, and most people fucking take the easiest route. I got a channel. Better be fucking channeling, because having a channel means fuck all to me, and it should mean fuck all to you. But I get it. We have to explain it to each other's. Hopefully they can learn something. Hopefully for some people, yeah, that resonates with me, Dom. I'm already doing that. So you're a tribe member. Let's work together. What about everybody else? They can go to kindergarten. I know that sounds very selfish on my part, but I'm being actually rationally selfish, because I'm considering others that are doing the work or trying to do the work. The rest of them, they're trying to entertain the fucking sleepy folks, the walking dead, the useless mouth breathers, as they would call them. I don't call them that. I'm just parroting that shit now.
Yeah, well, I can't say what works for them or what their experience with their endeavors are going to be. I just know that I become satisfied and content with my endeavors. And it seems to have been able to aid me in being able to transverse and function in this realm. But as far as anybody else, they're on a solo experience, man. I'm just sharing information that could be beneficial or may just be, obsolete. But according to any information I give, it's probably not going to be anything that I haven't seen tested, I haven't tested myself, or I haven't endured myself. And that's where I built my confidence up for my endeavors and where they've led me. It's why I don't need approval anymore. I used to think I needed approval at one time.
Well, when it becomes the way it's become disarray, shit show, yeah, then it has to be solely a soul journey because, but once it's, or people that are in tribes, then they'll consider each other and help each other, whether they fall by the wayside or they find out that somebody in your tribe have come back in one of the offspring's forms and we've got to aid them. But more times than not, most people are living very like a puppy mill, dog-eat-dog world.
I'll say that's a part of the disruption of after you've obtained, or after I obtained the broadness that I come to understand my contempt was with the human species, because they make it very difficult to function in that state, and that is a much more desirable state of existence than the one I was in prior, which seemed to be much more limited.
Well, like usual, I'm very grateful, Access, that you put yourself out here on your channel here. Well, whether or not a lot of us, or most of us, can grasp it, again, I've always kind of stated that's on me, and hopefully those people take accountability for themselves. Because if not, they're going to do what you kind of just been saying, where that you get pushed back or people complain to you. Like, no, that's not Access' responsibility for how you perceive or receive information he's sharing openly.
Yeah, I don't have to share it all is the key. And that's where, my that's one safety protocol that I reserve to myself is I don't have to speak. I don't have to share. I don't have to leave breadcrumbs. I don't have to do a fucking thing. I can step back and watch the masses suffer and hold the cure, the answer, or the solution, and never say a fucking word. So anyone who puts up opposition to information has not only cut their own throat, but is trying to cut the throat of the person that's giving out the information. Just because two things aren't compatible doesn't mean that they have to find conflict.
Well, usually more times than not, I can say that even about myself. Well, I'm going to say it's about myself, where most of the conflict is coming from within, not from outside. It'll reveal itself when you're in the presence of something else, and then somebody will say, "Yeah, but I'm upset about it." I said, "So what upsets you from within? Because that thing outside, that's not really upsetting you."
No, it's an internal conflict and struggle. Nobody's sharing it with them. They're going through it alone. They just assume that somebody else might relate or might be going through that same struggle or contempt that they're going through.
Mhm. Well, I kind of heard last week, and you kind of kept true to what you were saying last week. You're available all this week, so I look forward to hearing whether you're on Charles or other or even here, and sharing what I would perceive more direct answers, opposed to beating around the bush, hoping people can grasp it.
Yeah, I don't mind giving direct answers as long as I don't think I'm casting pearls before swine, or that I'm going to be responsible for somebody doing something stupid because I suggested that this is the way it's done. See, I have to take a little bit of responsibility for myself and others. As much as I don't approve of or agree with this species as a whole, it doesn't mean that I want the karma or the residuals from my information causing them distress or many people states of harm and distress. I do try and keep that in mind a bit. But people are also always allowed to ask questions, you know. At no time did I say no one couldn't ask me a question that whether they get an answer or not, that may vary. But they're always allowed to ask questions.
Well, and
They
it's a
don't
skill.
much.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, they don't, not many ask questions. A lot of people offer opinions, contempt, opposition, um, even rude dispositions and behaviors, but very rarely do they ask questions. And the ones that have asked me questions, I've tried to answer to the best of my ability. Lapis, about the dreams. I hope you got that figured out.
Well, it is a skill, so unless, for most people in the waking state, if they're going to have pre-set topics, and then they can, hopefully meditate on it. But then again, meditation shows be done, listening. So if somebody is listening from within and hearing others, people have to hone in on that, and it becomes closer. Where some people, they'll hear something, they have to note it, and then in a future interaction with themselves, or they go into a state of silence or stillness, and then it'll come to them. But for a lot of people to be on the go, saying, "I've heard something from Access, and something inside of me is asking for clarity," and it might come from a form of an inquiry.
Mm-hmm.
It really gets onto a lot of people when they think a question has to come with an answer, and that almost has to be deleted a little bit. There is not one clear-cut answer for everybody, but some people might ask questions for the benefit of others. For me, I think a lot of the inquiries can be done within, hence why even certain teachings will tell people, "Peace be upon you." Then why you keep talking? Peace be upon you. Silence be upon you. Why? Because that ego needs to shut up just long enough So when you get into that meditated state, you can listen from within. So something's being disturbed. Did you eat before you came here? Yeah, well, wait till you fast and come back. So we almost have to practice some sort of cleansing or detox or fasting before we even come to some of these channels. You know, I'm winging it to a certain point, and I'm still being the student, disobedient I am in a lot of ways, but I'm still being that, student, where a lot of people, they're not even in the student role yet access. So why would they be asking questions? So they can validate their narrow views, to confirm their narrow views, or to say, see, Axe is what he said to me. I said, no, Axe is just sharing out loud. Did you put the effort that he did? Well, no. So then why are you giving that little facial expression if I could actually see their face? You're like a little child giving me that, oh, I don't like broccoli. Have you ever tried it? Well, no. Okay, so then why you give me that face? That's a tough one, Access. You know, if you're around other people that are learning all this stuff, then yes, no sense in giving pearls to swines. But because we're trying to figure out who everybody is here, it's good to share that information because then you know who the swines are. That serves a purpose now because they're not going to know what to do with that pearl anyway, especially when we're saying there's bigger pearls somewhere else. We're just giving you these little pretend zirconia pearls.
You
So
know,
you're not. Go ahead.
I will make it an effort to allow people to understand and how to achieve the understanding of they're not as real as they think they are, and the concept of, you know, born naked with nothing, and afterlife naked with nothing. And in the dream, you're only using subconscious residuals, but you still have nothing. You take nothing in, you take nothing out. I'll try and clarify that to the masses this week somehow. Maybe someone will comprehend and utilize it.
Well, let's hope. Like a lot of these channels to me, Access, and maybe you can relate to this. It's the few. The masses would be if you randomly go to the mall or you pull a whole bunch of people on the highway and say, listen, I got a couple questions to ask you, or go to some political rally or some church. That's the masses. The few are the ones that come to some of these channels, and there might be 6 or 7 people. That's the few. So that's more of a group that you can actually hopefully bang those things back and forth with each other. I wouldn't want to hope that the few represent the whole, let alone the whole represent the few. That could be thousands and millions. You know, I think 1,000 people is still a few.
Well, I have watched, especially the last couple weeks, for some reason, those that were once inviting of nature when my presence was around, I seem to no longer have any use for my presence being around. And I'm watching this. I'm watching people fall away from me, one right after another. And that's fine. You know, it doesn't affect my journey. It doesn't affect what I'm doing, but it's amusing to see who has chosen to cut their measure short. I know how far they go until they override themselves. And I've been watching a lot of them, an extreme amount, enough where it's very relevant and very noticeable. And I thought, I'm curious. Wonder what changed.
for me, Access, again, it is a, can't even say it's a pearl, but it's just kind of a gauge to see somebody what they're willing to entertain. You know, when I say things like, are you the vessel? Are you the thoughts? Do you think you're the vessel? Do you think you're the thoughts? And just to see if they've ever entertained those things, or in this case, how they respond, let alone react to those things. You know, a person that says, I am the vessel, then you should be able to break it down. Now, if you're not the vessel, then we can inquire somewhere else. Then who are you then? You know, or you can at least break down what you think the vessel is. It's a meat suit. No offense to calling it a meat suit. It's something that I feel on a regular basis and shelter it, but that's not who I am. Now, people will say, but I think that's who I am. I said, okay, you're using the word think. Okay, so break it down. I'll gladly hear them. I'll show them what's called respect. I'll hear you. I'm not here to judge you. Go ahead.
I'll give you an observation. You're the same thing you were before you were birthed into this plane of existence without all the learned experience and all the experiences and information. That's who you are. Everything else after you were born is just a compilation of what you've added to your being here and your observation and interaction. Prior to that, you were absent of those experiences. You were absent of that type of learned knowledge. And that's about as far as you're going to be able to go unless you break boundaries. And most people are satisfied with that. They don't even consider that they were a blank slate prior to even being conceived. They came here a blank slate. And they hold on to all their experiences and their learned endeavors as if as if it has some profound meaning, when in actuality you're going to leave this place and you're going to be back to naked and empty-handed, and the only thing that you're going to have that I potentially see is that which you were before you were born, and that which you are after life, just a state of energy capable of being utilized in avatars or aspects until you reach some type of complete tangibility, if that's even possible. But the sum and total of what your learned experiences are here and all your endeavors, it amounts to about shit whenever you're on your final breath or before you take your first.
Thanks for that, Access, because you rarely don't hear somebody break it down, where more times than not, people are going to describe all their attachments, you know, all the programs that they have, and then they'll identify with those things. They'll hear about teachings like Buddhism, about non-attachment, but yet they don't realize how much that expands. You know, I think I'm my personality, my behavior, and then they reinforce it with all these personality tests. I said, but that's not who you are. Now, people will, in their defense, say, well, then what am I? Then I said, I'm not here to do your homework. I'm just trying to tell you something so that hopefully you can put that inside of your program and realize, oh, so you're actually giving me something to question the program. You should have done that for yourself, but yes. You know, it's not a matter of, okay, if I deduct everything that I'm not, therefore, then whatever's left, that's who I am. Yeah, you could try that if you want. But at least you can at least come to some sort of small kind of awareness. Well, then if I'm not the vessel, then who's been running it? Then you can start playing with the word like subconscious.
Well, until you've met your subconscious, you probably don't even pay much attention to it.
But it runs it. That's the whole thing. The subconscious is always running. This is why when people talk about schizophrenia, they're communicating with the subconscious. This nobody's ever taught them. I said, oh, you got a special gift. You're able to communicate with those voices. Yeah. You know, oh, you can see through a bird's eye. So you're able to actually, you know, as some people would call it, astral travel or remote viewing. Yeah, you're doing it through another animal's visual. Again, we're allowed to, well, not all of us, but the ones that can do it, you're allowed to actually be a living being in other forms. You can occupy another form. You're not going to invade it. You're going to be welcome in that.
It's like getting into a person's dreams. It's almost the same concept. It's just a little more of a different frequency that you have to use.
That's like Reiki. You know, you can send energy, both positive or negative. If you want to use the negative energy opposed to positive, same with blessing and cursing. Again, those are just energies, and you can send it and receive it. So it's not a surprise if they're showing us a technology like a TV and they say, oh, yeah, but we're seeing it. What do you mean they're actually able to see us? It works both ways. They just don't have to tell you all that. Well, they're spying on me. I said, who are they spying on again? Just out of curiosity, who are they spying on? Oh, that's right. You think you're the vessel still. Oh, okay. So you're that mortal form then. Or where do I go? I said, that's too big of a leap now. I've just introduced something very simplistic to that person. You should at least question within yourself the program that's been running. That's why when people get all upset, oh, I don't agree with the government. I say, you don't got a clue how it works. At this point, duct tape your mouth, open your ears, tie your hands, because this way you don't, unless you need to be distracted with your conscious mind, so your subconscious mind can take the forefront. It's okay, do some gardening then. But always hear. And then you realize this is orchestrated. There's a lot of webs involved in all this kind of stuff. I don't care if it's religion, state, commerce. Again, that's more the material part. Actually, I'm bringing it back to that a little bit. The stuff that you're sharing, I think we've had these kind of conversations before. I think we have, where that's a little bit more of awareness with more clarity, where most people, they're still at this very super level of, oh, I've become somewhat aware. Oh, okay. Of what?
Well, then they have reached a plateau in the course of their journey where they recognize a bit more about themselves, but they definitely haven't achieved the end goal by any shapes of the means. It's just maybe they feel comfortable on that plateau for a minute, or enlightened on that plateau for a minute. But believe me, you'll move on.
Mm-hmm. Well, they'll go sideways a little bit, you know, or they'll merge with other groups that are going to once again go from a spiritual awareness to the ego again, and like, oh yeah, we're all leveling up. You know, I'm with a bunch of people that are disagreeing. Sorry, or I'm disagreeing with the government and all that. I said, okay, so you're talking about really low middle management. How does that serve you again? Oh yeah, those are the same lower middle management that made promises to you. How's that working for you? Well, you don't understand, Dom. Well, the word understand gives it away. So I'm not here to understand you. That's your responsibility.
Yeah, I don't need anyone to understand me for me to function.
True.
It's just as long as they can understand me enough not to throw me in a south unit or bury me in some dungeon somewhere.
Oh, that could be worst case scenario.
Well, you get a bunch of them some bitches together, and one of them thinks that you're not making coherent sense. The whole team of them seem to want to drag you off to those little holes and deprivate you.
Yeah, because most of them don't realize what protects most of us is because we're in these fucking meat suits. Dare not get out of these meat suits. That becomes a different game now. And if I'm the kind of character, if I find out there's been other beings playing you like a puppet on the string, I might ask for a couple of favors just to fuck around for a bit. You know, especially if their intent was to be either and I respect people that are consciously aware of fucking people over. It's the ones that are agents and they're stupid as fuck. And they talk about shit that they should better off getting some fucking gorilla tape and put it on your mouth. You know, you went to university, get your rewards. Outside of that, this is a different game we're playing right now. And even helping other people that are trying to have a better situation with the governments, fuck them.
Well, that's
Because if they don't,
just not going to happen. That unless you're participating with them or you serve some purpose or use, it's just not going to happen.
no, at that point, they should at least be okay with their plight without understanding how the system works. The only reason why most people complain is because we have technology that shows you how other people are living. If they didn't see that, they would say, listen, I'm living in poverty. I don't even know it. I'm living in wealth. I don't know it. You know, like you can only compare something that people would deem as suffering in the way they lived if they compare it to something else. Outside of that, it is what it is. We're all living under poverty. We're all living under wealth, whatever that may be to them, because it comes in many forms, wealth and poverty. You know, the drama queen always wants to complain about not enough money, and then they complain about their ailments. Oh, fuck, I got cancer. And how did you get cancer? Well, it wasn't my, I don't know, I didn't do nothing. Really, you didn't do nothing? Interesting. This might even be a different game. Go ahead, Axis.
There's an indifference though that does exist in the constant, and I think that indifference starts from a beginning variable that was placed here and set into motion by the persistent. It was an action, maybe a grandpa, 2 generations worked in a coal mine, and that mutated cell or parasite didn't show up until 2 generations later. There are variables to that which are built into the constant, such as being born into poverty. I think it's an indifferent state. You're born into what you're born into. Otherwise, we'd all be rock stars, right?
No, it would be rocks of some sort, maybe rolling down some hills, but yeah.
So people don't like the fact that in this particular realm, there is an indifference, and people are at odds with that indifference. They can't seem to adjust and get along with it in any shape, form, or manner.
I think folks, from my awareness, are usually having strife with what they call the unfairness, but then their indifference to understand what that entails. To understand why we have inequality in the system. Why do I need 3 apples? Somebody else only needs 2. Why is one person a trillionaire and a whole bunch of other people are poor? So some people will use the word, well, it's not fair. I said, okay, so you're going to be in indifference when it comes to the details? They want what they want, what they lack, because they're presented with their senses, but yet they don't want to challenge that. Why do you want that? You even ask the other person that you think that are living this amazing lifestyle, or this person that obviously giving you the indication that they're poor. Do you want to get to know them and understand their plight or their story? Well, not really. Hence, right at that moment, they're being indifferent. Some people might say the word, I don't care. I said, no, it's not about caring. Because if you truly don't care or you do care, you wouldn't be saying anything. The fact that people say, I care, let alone they don't care, no, you don't care. You don't understand what it means. Caring would be that you would ask another person or hear another person and then go inwards. Okay, Dom, that's not your plight. But the fact that you heard them, you've helped them because they just needed an ear. But most people are, that's where their indifference acts, is in those areas. I'm not saying we're indifferent in other areas. When it's presented to them and they say, oh, well, the media's telling them there's poverty in the world or there's rich people in the world, but yet they're never going to try to say, well, then how does that really serve? I just put that out there. I'm not saying serve me. They can put that word if they want. But I'm just saying, how does that serve? That information. And then you can say, okay, how does that serve me? How does that serve others? How does that serve my environment? Again, that's when the conscious mind, when it just wakes up. Now you're in the senses, but you want to be able to communicate with the subconscious mind on a regular basis because it's there. It's the one that has to process the food. That's why, let me fast and meditate on that. Because if I eat, I'm asking my subconscious to process all that food. Because the conscious mind, the ongoing program, that's all it is. It's an ongoing program. Siri, what's running everything behind you? And don't tell me you're the computer. And don't go around telling me you're the Wi-Fi. Don't go around telling me you're the electricity. Siri, you're the ongoing fucking program. And there's a whole bunch of other people that put that input into it. Go ahead, sorry.
To process information.
Yeah.
So
What is that
Siri
behind
is the
program?
process, processed information. And that's what most people are, is just basically interpreters of processing information, and most aren't even good at it.
True. But if they actually learned and became aware, they could literally become good at it. They might not become great at it. Most people become a pro at being inefficient at it. So they've gone pro. Opposed to, wouldn't it be nice to be good at something? And then this way, when you're communicating with other people, then you can appreciate when you meet somebody that's actually great at what they're doing. This is how we respect each other in other ways. Appreciation. Look at an athlete, for example. I'm just going to use on the physical level. Even though there's more involved in it, you watch an athlete, they put a lot of effort in it. And even that, they got professional coach. Yeah, you're really good. You learn how to run and all that. But we're going to have to tweak it a little bit. What do you mean? You could be that much more better at your craft if you learn how to breathe differently. Understand how to work with altitude and all that. But most of us don't. We want to be subpar at best, even though the word sub helps, but subpar, and then punk it off like as though I'm amazing. You went to fucking university for one fucking degree? Well done. You're gonna work with that for the next 2 or 3 decades? Yeah. And then you're gonna retire? Sorry, I make that mistake because really people, what they're really saying, they're retarded, but they retire. And you took your settlement, fiat currency, some financial gains, some fame, maybe you'll get a nice little place in Florida, you'll bitch and complain about the country, but yet you'll take advantage of the system. I think, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, yeah, most.
I think I can even say for myself, I just never became pro at it. I don't think I actually, with all sincerity, I don't think I could even become pro at it. Because there's a part of me that's a program within me. I said, Dom, it's not because you care about other people. It's it's insanity to do it over and over again. Now people can turn around and say, but you need food. I said, that's another game too. Every time I eat, I gotta go shit. I gotta piss every time I drink. I said, that's a constant program running. Like I'm a bottom feeder at that point. Yeah, but how would you survive? Well, that opens the question. Am I truly in this form? Because that's a word. Am I in the form? Am I the form? Am I just a receiver picking up information? Again, if anybody really wants to challenge the program, push it to its limit, to one's awareness. I don't know what the limit is in the ultimate bigger picture, but push it to one's limit. Fast for 10 days, 20 days. Well, why would I do that? Oh, now you're using philosophy questions? Try to stay up for 7 days straight, and you see how quickly your program will probably just shut down. But yeah, you could be in a coma for fucking months on end. Go figure. That means the waking state has a limit, but the subconscious can go on for months. Now, I'm not saying that everybody can do that. Maybe those are just certain kinds of individuals that have those kinds of abilities. No different. Some people can consume blood of somebody else and get memory. Same with gold and all that other stuff.
I usually usually get the strongest pronunciation of energy when I'm in localized presence or in personal interaction. But I am becoming much more broad in the spectrum of being able to reach out. So what do you think it is then, Dom? Is it a resentment that these people haven't endeavored on their own journey of self-discovery to push the safety protocols, the limits, and the boundaries to experience their own, we'll call it discovery, that causes them to voice themselves against anyone who has?
I can speak for myself, I guess. For me, it's more of a frustration based on when I try to share with certain people. So for other people, it might come across as they resent, that other people, and of course that'll be me with my ego, where it's not going their way. I try not to make it about me, but I know it's always going to be about me. But again, for me, it's frustration. For other people, it might come across, like you're saying, Axis, as a resentment or anger or hate. It's easier to blame some unknown thing for some people opposed to actually turn around and look at the masses, including themselves, and say, oh, then we're the issue then. Yeah. No different if you're the solution. It's better to start off with you than with others. The whole is based on the parts. Okay.
That's the first perspective you should take, is whether you're the problem, your misinterpretation or your expectations or your projections, or is this person actually standing in my way purposely and causing me this disruption by force of will?
Well, we could say you would think, but for a lot of people, they're going to be led by their feelings. And if those feelings aren't developed, they're going to be doing what, we'll say like the Adam and Eve story. They're going to be pointing fingers, opposed to be like the serpent, going to keep quiet, vengeful, but keep quiet and say, I'll strike when the time comes. In this case, just, especially when they don't know how to put themselves down. People will gladly put other people down in the way they complain and complain to them, but they won't do it to themselves. And the fact that they're doing it in a public display, when the time comes, you should be able to rip a hole in yourself in front of everybody in public. Why would I do that? Well, the question is, why are you doing it the other way? Why are you ripping into other people's when they're sharing openly? Yeah, but I don't agree with what they're saying. I said, that fuck means fuck all about you. When somebody else is sharing what they're doing or what they're thinking or feeling, they're putting themselves out there. Unless you put on the card table your hand, shut the fuck up. Whether that's on the panel or chatting, because we already got a lot of people fucking wasting their time fucking writing books. And I'm like, okay, but to who? To the masses? The masses don't give a shit. And if they truly do give a shit, then why aren't they writing their own stories? Or even finding out is even in their stories at any given moment. This is not about the few that are helping and the few that are trying to manipulate. It's the masses. And the masses are the ones that aren't even participating in most of these chats or when people say, oh, I read a book. I say, you're the few. It could be millions. talking, most people just settle for, oh, I got a lot of people coming to my channel. I'm going to get fiat currency from it. I'm going to get a whole bunch of people. I got thousands of people subscribing to me. The fucking word gives away. Subscribe. Fucking. I did it out of pure obligation or duty with my wife for subscribe. Outside of that, I don't fucking subscribe to anybody else's fucking channel. No offense to anybody. It's just why I'm contributing to the channel. You know, and then on top of that, the program gives us all the thumbs up, thumbs down, the mold emojis. Fuck, we're all sharing with bots. And then when we talk about shit like about transhumanism, they're gonna give us a deer in the headlight. Oh, I don't know what you're talking about transhumanism. That'll never happen. Fuck, you're the frog in the water, and it's occurring right now as we speak. It's like using a calculator. Yeah, sure it is. You know, we're not even thinking anymore. They shouldn't be saying, "Well, Dominic, what are you thinking?" No, they should be saying, "Can I share you my program and how I've been told to feel?" You know, for most people, having that beginner mind shouldn't be difficult because they don't got much in their fucking brain in the first place. Most of it's fucking programs.
Yeah, it's reactionary, knee-jerk, autopilot life for most.
Not saying with me, I says, okay, I know my emotions aren't developed. Because if I was really calm, I'd be sedate. I wouldn't even be here then. If I honestly didn't give a shit about where we're going, you know, meaning that I share awareness. This is the direction we're going. Now, people can bitch and complain and say, well, but I don't agree with it. I said, this is the direction we're going. Why? You made yourself expendable. I don't see everybody growing their own fruits and vegetables. Now, somebody can say, what about me? I said, I'm only one person. This is a bigger picture than just one person when we're talking about outside stuff about growing fruits and vegetables, then we're going to be the example for each other. Even though I say to myself, we're not the vessel. But if we're going to play the human part, we at least have to try to steward it. If not, then we move on. Maybe it was designed this way. Maybe with this new age coming up, it's designed. It's time to get rid of the human vessel. Why? It's too cumbersome. Way too much energy that are spent. Go ahead.
I think that equation was put into motion, and that type of engineering was set up with intent long before we even became aware of it for an agenda. But that's just my observation of how the survival of the fittest and those who endeavor to persevere beyond, you know, the reasonable body or lifespan would conduct themselves, because it's exactly how I would conduct myself. I would start some variables. I would, you know, put some people in compartmentalized research. I would start development, and then I would start neuro development for conscious research and, you know, understanding how the neurosystem in the brain and the body functions, while my compartmentalized robotics team and then my compartmentalized, you know, quantum processor team or supercomputer team or whatever processing unit I'm using to calculate my information quick enough that this could be viable before I die without letting anyone know. Of course, yeah, makes perfect sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, why would I want to? Why would I want to share the world with 8 billion other people when I can live for thousands of years and only have to share it with a few thousand if I choose?
Well, there's probably we probably need just enough, whatever it is, to keep this experience going. Whether there's 8 billion, I know people have done certain kinds of calculation with all their populations of each major cities based on what they tell us, and they've never gone beyond 4 billion people. So again, that's just another variation. It's like when they talk and they put out the program black and white for the skin color where and it clearly doesn't show it. So once again, that just validates it. The senses are easily misled. You know, it's like when I hear people say, you know, does it make sense? I say, well, as long as it makes sense to you, why? Because you're the one that's playing with those senses. I have my own senses that I'm playing with, and you're not going to see it through my senses. So that's me to validate somebody else's senses, or they tell, can we agree? I'm like, agree upon what? The words we're using, especially if I'm aware of sounds and frequencies. You know, again, this is where we all get dumbed down, that we cult up, and then somebody in the group that's aware of it, and the rest of us is just parroting. It's like when two couples get together and one starts dressing like the other one. That person's lost himself at that point. And the other person doesn't respect the other person by saying, listen, don't mimic me. It's a compliment if you're dressing similar to me, because we're, you know, especially if I'm making my own clothes and you're not. You know, again, that's where these dogmas run rampant on us. I'm not saying they're bad. Maybe dogmas do serve a purpose, but when we do it out of ignorance, it's kind of like the analogy I use is customs. If we have certain customs and traditions and we don't challenge them or question them, a couple of things could occur. Either A, most people, it's going to die, or most people are going to follow it aimlessly. And they're not ever have a test to it, and then they'll just run away from it. Or they'll actually hang on to it tight. I said, then you don't really understand the customs, or let alone the traditions. Same with languages. Language works the same way. We should be able to question things. My father told me this is the way we do it. I'm still allowed to ask questions, because what foundation am I going to have on what you're trying to tell me I have to build on? You know, if there's a God out there, I should be able to challenge it. And in this case, I don't challenge it. I challenge the people that believe in that stuff. Just because a whole bunch of people believe in a God, I said there's a billion Muslims, and there's a billion Christians. Could they all be misled? Yes. So why would I worry about 100,000 people believing in the Earth's shape when I already know human behavior? People are easily misled. Am I being misled? Yes, but I have a better chance trying to figure it out for myself than opposed to a billion people. And again, those are the numbers that they give us. Go ahead, Axis.
Yeah, it is, and it's, you know, that's the best base reference that I can give that is relatable. I don't know what the number is, but even in that, regardless of what the numbers is, there's only so many biogeneticists that have the talents required to surpass what the indoctrinated would consider their God, because they can manipulate the genetic sequences, they can genetically manipulate, you know, through CRISPR technology, they can splice, create, and now potentially transfer consciousness. It makes the biogeneticist a lot more important than any faction of religion, or, you know, even their misrepresented state of addressing this as their God. Because when it comes to humans, the biogeneticist and the bioengineer has an advantage over religion by far. Even computers that are dealt with in specialty computers, I'm talking, you know, most of your D-Wave and your Deep Blue, you know, it takes a special operator to be able to run those equations and interpret them. Well, that just increased their value to get the advantage of living for 1,000 more years. But the general worker or the YouTube philosopher, yeah. So regardless of what the number is, when it comes down to it, you know, the ones that do have this at their beckoning call to be able to proceed to live 1,000 years in another body or an enhanced body. I look for them only to take people that have that type of value. Programmers, bioengineers, people who can advance them in physics and development, even engineers for travel and design, whether that be air travel or some other form of travel. But the rest of us, in the grand scheme of things, the ones that hold that type of technology, from my perspective, they wouldn't. I wouldn't see that they would be useful to what my objective would be. And I'm kind of seeing that transpire in real time in this plane of existence. I'm watching the general masses just die off. I mean, sudden death syndrome, heart attack, various other forms of immediate onset of disease and death. But I'm still seeing the same people that run in those high tech and bioengineering fields, still the same faces. So you're absolutely right. We will take a turn towards technology whether we want to or not. And there's always maid service in Canada if you don't want to participate. They kind of encourage people not to go along for the ride anymore. That's why I'm waiting for the assisted suicide and voluntary suicides to hit the state. You guys already got that in operation up there.
Well, Judah's explained to me what the process is. Pretty hideous.
Yeah, it is. And there's a lot of victimized people, but it makes perfect sense to instead of having to explain why all these people are dropping dead, just have them show up at your local clinic and hook the machine up, and there you go. And they're going to start offering incentives, I'm sure, for people to off themselves.
Well, they might have put some of these things in place just for, as this progressed more, as the reset and whatever new systems coming into place, people will find a lot of things overburdened for them financially. It might not just be set up for the elderlies. It'll just be people, again, if a person's not mentally or emotionally developed, they will do those kind of things. Think about suicide in general, where they're just not developing those areas. So they just figured, something, it's better to end it because they just don't know any other way out with the suffering. It's more about suffering. Most people are going to be pretty ignorant to what the concept of death is. They're just trying to avoid more suffering. And for some people, their suffering comes in the form, I want more stuff. I want to live more comfortably. It's always about the me. So that, usually if a person wants to do that, that's their choice, but they should at least be informed. How do you not know you're fucking the system? And the systems can be very vengeful that way. I don't need a religious teaching about, well, God is against that. I don't know if it's about God per se, but how selfish of an act that is. Most people already are selfish. They're just doing selfish acts at that point.
Right, right, and I can see even the most saintly still conduct themselves in a very selfish way. You know, I do it with information. I do it with knowledge. You know, I'm kind of selfish and protective of a lot of things that maybe I shouldn't be, but I choose to be, and I have that right. You know, but people still think that this is a lot of people still think that this is the be all end all of being solidified and real. When I'm just coming to the conclusion that we are so far from a solidified state of real that I'm questioning how much base there is to our existence. I'm seeing more of a repetitive operating system working off of fractal numbers and proportion than I am off of a free flowing state of will and self guidance because we're irresponsible.
I think access, even what we usually share about, for folks that probably hear, I'm not saying people in chat, but a lot of times I know if I have these kind of conversations, there's a lot of people that would get upset because they will say things, well, that's not important, that's woo stuff. I said, but you're missing the content of and the reason why people have these conversations. It's revealing whether or not you're willing to entertain ideals, or at least be open-minded or receptive-minded, because I can transfer this type of conversation, the way I communicate, with politics, with religion. But unfortunately, people have this either-or mentality. So the stuff that I talk about, I'm not talking about me, but other people, when they talk about certain things, it has to fit into a nice category. So anything, because they spend a lot of energy, okay, I got to figure that's right, that's wrong, religion's right, state's wrong, and then you have to figure out the Pope is right, and some president leader, he's wrong. Opposed to, if you put aside your right and wrong, you can entertain more ideals. And this is how we explore with each other. This is how they come up with technology. I'm not saying humans come up with it, but maybe we download that information. You have to be a good receiver of information, hence Kabbalah. So this way, we should be able to entertain things about poverty, wealth, spiritual stuff, political stuff, fucking beheadings if you want to get technical, kinds of stuff. But people only want to see things like a horse with visors on them, and whatever comes to my presentation in the form of a square box. I don't care if it's the television, the radio, even though it's a different kind of box, but it's receiving it now in a different way, or through a tablet of some sort, or a book form. A lot of squares in the world and all this stuff here. But, hopefully people can get to that point. Maybe the hope's too long on my part. They can be inspired to have some sort of clarity. Why am I reading this book? And then, okay, then I understand that. Now I can actually try to figure out what's the information that I'm perceiving or trying to perceive in this particular case. Because if not, people are just learning how to read and they become proficient at reading, no different than being proficient how to use numbers, but they don't understand the energy of numbers. Let alone, why would you play with numbers? People ask people, what time is, and they'll give me some sort of gauging of numbers. Well, it's 4 o'clock. I said, so you think that's what time is? Using numbers to gauge it on a clock. Okay, so then what are those 2 objects in the sky? Are those time, or is that signs? Well, those are
Cycles.
Signs. There you go, Axis. You're always going to add to it. You're gonna share something. That's what we should be doing. Always adding. And like, oh, okay. Axis added a caveat to it. And I think, okay, what I said, yeah, I'll put that aside. Yeah, it is cycles. And then they wonder why back in the days, even today, there's people that understand those cycles. Okay, this is what we plant. This is the type of currency we use. This is why we have Mercury retrograde. This is why we understand about transhumanism. This is why we know there's going to be 3 major wars, because they've been reading those luminaries for centuries. And that's not the elites. They probably pay people. You have to indoctrinate people. And or even in prison, these people, yeah, you're a person that understands astrology, you're going to work for us. And what am I going to get in exchange? You're going to get some fame and some settlement in fiat currency. Oh, okay. Or maybe some next lifespan, you'll get some rewards. You'll be very attractive in your next lifespan. Oh, okay. But for some people, when they hear that, there's this thing that's not silenced, and it goes off, and then it just comes out like fucking diarrhea of the mouth. Well, don't shut the fuck up. I'm already reading your energy. You're gonna say something fucking clever. Well, I don't believe in that stuff. The word, now you said the word belief. You want to know what belief is? I tell you, a guy named Jesus. Have you ever met him? No, that's a belief. But if you met him, now you know of him. But do you understand him for yourself? Do you have discernment? What does he stand for? To me, it's like a politician, somebody working for the politician, usually for free, knocking on my door. Dom, I represent this party, blah, blah, blah. Can we count on your vote? Do you even got a fucking clue who the person that you think you want, that I should vote for? No. So then why would I fucking endorse a guy that I don't got a clue who he is? That's what most people think like. Well, I'm a liberal. I'm a conservative. I'm a democracy guy. Oh, Dominic, capitalism works. How does capitalism work? Please share with me, you little fucking child. Well, it's better than communism. That doesn't mean capitalism works. If I have the ability to print whatever fucking amount of money and I have the military, don't you think I can make any ism works? Liberalism, Marxism, I can make any of them work. Only thing I got to do is convince the masses to fucking brainwash each other. Train the first fucking, sorry, my language, I apologize, Axis. Train the first sheep and the first sheepdog. And then they'll train their offsprings over and over again until once in a while another living being comes inside of that program and said, I'm going to question it. And you'll see how quickly everybody starts defending it. Now you know who those walking dead are. It's usually the child that. Go ahead, Axis.
The observation to that I see is, they were separated. We as a species were separated from the divine or the creator or whatever is in a more broadened state than we are by leaps and bounds. And people still think that even with all their opinionated idealism, indoctrination, and likes and dislikes, they deserve a place in the same seated council as the divine, whether you call it heaven, nirvana, or Shangri-La or whatever. Have you questioned yourself enough to know that you would be a disease and an infection amongst the truly divine? They wouldn't want you there. They don't want you there.
Unless they find out you have some sort of gift. Maybe I'm always speculating that whoever's in the known, how people, let's say in the Hindu culture, where certain people will look at two couples that potentially are going to marry, and they can read their life chart and realize what your gifts are, what your potential are. So there might be people that have that ability, or beings that have that ability to know, okay, Axis, Dominic, whoever, you have this ability, and we can even read whether or not you'd be the type of person that would sell out or not. I think most of us, the reason why we can talk the way we are, because we're not even under the radar. It's insignificant. The program is so well orchestrated, and they're so focused in on doing a new system. They don't give a shit about the masses, especially when the masses clearly show they don't give a shit about each other. So they eventually deserve what they get. You reap what you sow, and if they're doing it out of ignorance, that's what they get. It's only because people. Oh, go ahead, Maxine.
Even the best of us and the saintly can disagree and find argument. Now, if you're sitting amongst the council of the divine and your mortal little ass decides that you want to take argument with one of the council of the divine because you don't agree, that's just a disruption to the process of something that you can't even comprehend. So why would they want anyone there? You would have to be so far removed from any state of being a part of a human or the human species to truly sit amongst those that create constructs, universes, um, have divinity within them to the point where there is no flaw. What what use would they have for you there? But yet people feel entitled to that.
Mhm.
And if they're on YouTube, believe me, they've already and I can say this for myself, you know, as far as divinity goes, or working or setting with a council of divine creators, you know, you're falling shorter than most.
Well, I don't know what your access, but I get a sense the way you communicate, I probably can relate, but I enjoy sharing with the other people. I'm a social butterfly that way. Maybe if I wasn't a social butterfly, I probably might not share, but I know myself well enough to realize I do enjoy sharing. I don't get discouraged, in certain instances where people either don't understand me or they don't understand what I'm sharing. I give that a given. And sometimes I just give people the benefit of the doubt that they've done some sort of work for themselves, at least get to know themselves. I don't necessarily think they need to understand the stuff that I'm talking about because I don't own it. I'm only hearing what other people tell me. And then I just go inwards and think, okay, that resonates. I can see that as a possibility. I couldn't prove it. And even if I do prove it, how would that serve? Especially if I know I had to do all the leg work. So how would that serve somebody else? Unless they're lazy and they said, I just came from church and I just voted. So whatever you tell me, then I'm going to agree with you. Stay with your church and your state. Don't want to go me.
My work on that was the fact that until I started working with four states of information and a coherent movement, um, I could not go to certain places within myself. If I felt anger, there were places that were restricted to me inside of me. If I felt joy, there were certain places in me that were restricted to me. So for me to venture into a less than, we'll just call it, before I could travel into a malevolent state, I had to eliminate that benign state for me to truly encompass the malevolent state. And the other way around, I had to completely eliminate the malevolent state to get in a full state of benign. So, and even that, I still have issues with, because there's certain there's certain places where certain ideals, thoughts, feelings, expressions, and energies just can't survive. You know, one's going to outweigh the other. My joyous thoughts are going to outweigh my um, more violent thoughts, and my violent thoughts at times are going to outweigh my joyous thoughts. So I have to get complete control over that and stabilize it so that both states are available to me upon request. It's a part of starting to approach things with complete logic instead of emotion, and that's a useful tool. If people would stop and examine themselves for a couple of seconds before they reacted, then they might find that they're reacting from a malevolent emotional state instead of a rational state, or they may be reacting from a compassionate state instead of a logical state. Which in one way makes computers much more efficient than humans.
Well, if one's not developed in those areas, yeah, to communicate with other humans, probably a computer, especially since we've been inundated with all kinds of computer stuff like calculators, telephones, all that's just other different types of technology. But if people are truly learning how to use their emotions or their mental capacity, they're going to want to communicate with other humans that hopefully have that ability, or at least, learn those abilities. Because if not, then we settle for things like we interact with technology, in this case, computers and all that kind of stuff, access. Even though that's the cruel reality, most of us are leaning more towards that type of technology. And then, of course, that will reinforce the illusion of being self-absorbed or independent in this case. It's always a good illusion thinking that you're independent.
Well, no, even myself, I rely on healthcare and a dietary delivery, the electric company. I depend on quite a few things. I am not by any means at this point in time self-sufficient. Even if I was in a state away from all of this, I would still be dependent on the environment to provide me with what I need to stay self-sufficient.
Mm-hmm. That's the illusion. We've been conditioned to think, I'm independent. Nothing shows it. If anything else, I would think that we're still even more dependent than we were when we were children, because we're not even showing clear-cut interdependency. Even though all of them are illusion, one just seems more observable than the other ones. I can't truly say to somebody that, through my observation, that they're showing independent. You're in a building that somebody else built. You're paying with things that, you earned the money, but that's somebody else is circulating that. You're buying gas from somebody else. Oh, then I'm interdependent. I said, are you participating in the gas coming into your gas station? Well, no. Are you building the car? Well, no. I said, when you were a child, you were dependent. As an adult, you're a bigger child. You're more dependent. I can't even say a child, a baby. But that's difficult because a lot of folks will say, yeah, but I'm an adult. I said, your body matured, but not you.
The various levels of... No, go ahead, Don, please.
No, I'm done. Go ahead, Axel. Go ahead. You sure?
The variables of the human in different aspects, and the maturity are generally offset. They're not balanced. You know, somebody can be physically and appear physically mature, and mentally they're just not, and emotionally they're not, and even rationally they're not. And it works in the other spectrums as well, however you want to arrange them. But to be fully balanced with all of those different aspects of oneself and still approach everything logically, that requires a lot of discipline.
It does, and to me, those folks are a beacon of some sort. Not necessarily. I'm actually going towards the light. I'm probably going away from it, but I'm happy, if I can use the word happy, that those people are being that example. You know, it's like me. I know a lot about health. It doesn't mean I'm practicing it. So I'm sharing awareness. Doesn't mean I'm actually applying awareness. So that I know of myself. Other people might say, well, I'm doing both. I said, okay, that test is for you. Why? Because I think there's a part of it that most of us, we know when we're in the presence of somebody that's actually being balanced. I don't know necessarily if you have to do balance, but you're being balanced. You know, the aspect of the physical part is just one aspect. And yes, that's the doing part. So you manifest it. You're bringing it down into the physical. But how are you maintaining it in those other planes, in this case, three-dimensional, in the emotional and mental planes?
I guess that's kind of whenever I first started working with Kelly, we started with her identifying what others were, what she had grown used to, and her social and environmental stimulation, and her involuntary signing off and co-signing for different reasons for other people, and then reinforcing the different aspects of herself throughout the course of the day that she analyzed them, each and every one of them, before she reacted on them. And she started succeeding at that. And that's why I persisted and moved forward with my endeavors with her. Now we're far beyond that. But it took that analyzing each and every decision she was making and basically asking your question, you know, how does it serve you? What is it doing for you? Is this your ideal or is it someone else's ideal? And is this what you truly want, or is this just something that you cycled yourself into expecting? Well, I mean, we went through all those aspects to the point where, you know, if there's a state of mental bare nakedness, we were there. And that's whenever uh, the reception of the technique that I used was. But even that was still, you know, there was trial and error, but the technique in the end prevailed, and the result was very much a worthwhile result for her. Me, I just kind of guided and pointed which direction to see, you know, how far she wanted to truly go and whether she was truly committed and convicted by it. And it turns out, to good fortune that she was. And that's kind of why I brought her up on the panel this last time. Is she's got a pretty good reach as far as being able to communicate with a bunch of people, and I'm trying to help her establish not only a platform, but almost a system of utilizing her talent. instead of it being me and a mirrored copy of indoctrination, the information was put there, and she chose to engulf it, and live it and become it. And all I could do was sit back and just throw water on it, and hope that it grow, or give it some nutrients and watch it grow. And I think that with the state of things now, that's a rare commodity, And I do appreciate the joining the panel for that, because she's going to start her own platform, and I think she's going to do just fine. But it was a part of the process, I didn't know how
Well,
your take on that was.
it was enjoyable. It's what I look forward to those kind of conversation when they're presented. I guess, I'm using the word guess, but like the exploration we did with books as a species, eventually it becomes very congested. Eventually, a lot of people just want to dream of writing a book. I think because technology is accelerating, it'll be the same thing even in these cases like YouTube or anything online. It will become very congested, and in that congestion, we're going to have a lot of messages missed. People aren't going to be able to decipher the difference between the ones that are channeling, having certain gifts, and then in the end it becomes noise. People are still going to do what they're going to do, and they're going to say what they're going to say. But eventually, I think inevitably it's going to happen. I'm the person that leans towards all the books should have been burnt by now. Because if those books were being channeled or downloaded, then it should be a gift if you are able to channel that information. But when we paired information, whether orally or, because even orally, unless you're going to embody that information like a mantra, you're going to repeat it over and over again, or you're going to hear it over and over by somebody else that has a tuning voice opposed to one's own tuning voice, then that's just going to be more noise. I know that sounds very kind of like defeatism, but that's part of the transhumanism again, beyond the human experience. And as long as we're talking about it and reading about it, opposed to are we truly observing that information and then wondering, why do I break my silence? Why do I need to write it down? Because eventually it feeds the ego. And then a person says, well, I have another channel now. I said, so many people watched it? 3? 1? Because the only one that really needs to hear it is you. I'm the student as I speak out loud. That's for my benefit. But I get it. For other people, it's like, but I need what? You need reassurance, which is fine. We're going to break it down where you didn't get that reassurance. Was it your parents? Was it your community? Nobody actually helped harness that gift of yours. Not to take away from the people that are going to share that information, but because there's so many people, and I've kind of told you before, Access, this is like going to the flea market and everybody's selling the same wares. Eventually, it's like, whoever's peddling the cheapest ware at that point, the quickest ware. Think about how YouTube has branched on into Twitter. Give me something in 10 seconds. Why? Because I don't want to actually work for it. And that's inevitably where we're at. It reveals us as a species, and it confirms why it's time to move on from us when it comes to the human experience. Now, will there be people that are going to say, but I still want to experience it, and I'm doing my part? We're just as strong as the weakest link. It was never about we're just as strong as the strongest link. Well, then that's easy. It's the weakest link, the ones that are falling by the wayside. Those are the ones that we need to help. But that's the masses. And at that point, their energy is stronger than the few, whether it's the few that are trying to help us or the few that are trying to manipulate us. bitching and complaining about the few that are trying to manipulate you from the masses are the same masses that are going to bitch and complain about the few that are trying to assist them. I'm not trying to wake them up. I'm just wondering whether or not they want to be awake. If not, fuck them. Seriously.
Then
And I'm
you,
glad
you
go ahead.
then you can point them in the right direction, and if they truly want it, they'll reach out and take it, and they'll do the work. But if they're lip service, they aren't going to do a damn thing.
Well, private conversations with people are a little bit different, especially if it's, you get a little bit face to face, their facial gestures, you'll pick up their energy, and you realize, yeah, you're not going to hide from me. I'm the kind of person that don't mess around with the mouse. I take everything else out of the fucking room before I play with the mouse. So it's the same thing with other people. I'm not interested in your personality behaviors. I'll move everything else out first and then find out that's who you are. Why weren't you honest with yourself? Not me. I don't give a shit about me. Here's that piece of wood. Go in the back 40, hit yourself over the fucking head. Why? Because you need to get your attention, not mine. I'm the one that's being the idiot, the fool by talking. I wouldn't even spend a fucking minute writing this shit down. I'm already being the fool talking. But
In that sense, you're creating your own conversations with anybody you interact with.
Yep, I am. I see it, actually. I'm with you. But it's nice, enjoyable when I meet characters like you, JG, pronouncing it correctly, JG. Also, New Guru. I enjoy their company. Because if we're going to break our silence, we're at least going to try to help each other, whether awareness or confirm it, where other people's like, oh, no, Dom, I don't agree with you. Fuck, I don't want to hear that. Please do me a favor, buy fucking Gorilla Tape. Oh, no, you're being rude. I said, no, you're being rude to yourself. You just don't know it yet.
Yeah, they've been wonderful in the chat, man. They've been sparking it up in the chat together.
Mm-hmm.
It's nice to see information exchange and information being allayed in the chat, other than a lot of what I've seen. But I had to before I could get, well, even with Kelly, and I'm not talking physically naked. I had to bare my naked self to allow her to bare her naked self, so that she could look at the foundation and the fundamentals of her structure. And at the same time, I was doing the exact same thing and explaining the process to her. And we just kind of went on from there. And I don't think that I think that once it comes down to us having to interact on a completely digital level with each other, and all this human part is taken completely away from us, and there's an AI interpreter for transmitting communication from one person to another. That's kind of in the realm of where I'm seeing this going, and what we've been talking about in the medical field, and how that's going to apply itself. Is there's not going to be chip for hands-on. Everything is going to be, even maybe a conversation like we're having will be intermediated by some type of algorithm or AI. And instead of us stumbling verbally to try and interpret each other, this AI interpreter comes in and narrows the use of processor speed, energy, and reduces the thermodynamics of the situation by interpreting everything for us. And I don't think that's too far out of the scope of things. They already have people afraid to say words on YouTube or they'll get their channel shut down. They, you know, even in public now, there's certain things you have to watch if you say them because there's consequences to them. You know, and I could see them marketing an AI intermediary that keeps everything politically correct for your protection.
Well, Mr. Access, I better take off. I gotta go and earn some more of that paper money tomorrow. And I gotta wake up early, so, and then visit my dad. So,
Well, you have all that I have to offer is in the way of the best for you and your dad.
thanks.
And
I appreciate that.
thanks again for showing up, Dom. Thanks for having a live stream with me. And if there's ever anything that you have questions on, especially to my endeavors, please feel free. Anybody, feel free to ask. You know, I will explain it to those who inquire, but I'm just not going to hand it out freely.
True. Very true, Access. Thanks,
But
and thanks for all the guys. Go ahead.
I always, as you know, you're always a welcomed cohort, and your company is always desired, Dom. So thank you, and thank you for the conversation, man.
Always. And I hope in the future, JG or New Guru and other guys want to come up, because I know both of them have a lot that they can share. But that's when they choose to come up. Thanks, guys. Everybody.
Yeah, I'd love to have them up. So thank you, chat. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dom. Thank you, anyone who catches this in the future and finds anything useful from it. It's been a great show, and Axis is out.